Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Ezra Klein's new book, Why We're Polarized. This is from the introduction, and it's a couple pages into it. I'm starting out here. I have found that American politics is best understood by braiding two forms of knowledge that are often left separate: the direct on-the-ground insights shared by politicians, activists, government officials, and other subjects of my reporting, and the more systemic analyses conducted by political scientists, sociologists, historians, and others with the time, methods, and expertise to study American politics at scale. On their own, political actors often ignore the incentives shaping their decisions, and academic researchers miss the human motivations that drive political decision-making. Together, however, they shine bright light on how and why American politics works the way it does. There's much awry in American politics, and I won't in this book attempt to catalog all of it. But I've come to believe the master story, the one that drives almost all divides and most fundamentally shapes the behavior of participants, is the logic of polarization. That logic, put simply, is this: to appeal to a more polarized public, political institutions and political actors behave in more polarized ways. As political institutions and actors become more polarized, they further polarize the public. This sets off a feedback cycle. To appeal to a yet more polarized public, institutions must polarize further. When faced with yet more polarized institutions, the public polarizes further, and so on. Understanding that we exist in relationship with our political institutions, that they are changed by us and we are changed by them, is the key to this story. We don't just use politics for our own ends. Politics uses us for its own ends. There are many different types of polarization possible, and I'll discuss some of them later in the book, but the locus of polarization I'll discuss is on political identity. And that requires saying a few words about a term that should be very useful in American politics, but that has become almost useless: identity politics. A core argument of this book is that everyone engaged in American politics is engaged in identity politics. This is not an insult, and it's not controversial. We form and fold identities constantly, naturally. Identity is present in politics in the way gravity, evolution, or cognition is present in politics. That is to say, it is omnipresent in politics because it is omnipresent in us. There is no way to read the literature on how humans form and protect their personal and group identities, literature I will survey in this book, and believe that any of us is immune. It runs so deep in our psyches, so activated so easily by even weak cues and distant threats, that it is impossible to speak seriously about how we engage with one another without discussing how our identities shape that engagement. Unfortunately, the term identity politics has been weaponized. It is most often used by speakers to describe politics as practiced by members of historically marginalized groups. If you're black and you're worried about police brutality, that's identity politics. If you're a woman and you're worried about the male-female pay gap, that's identity politics. But if you're a rural gun owner decrying universal background checks as tyranny, or a billionaire CEO complaining that high tax rates demonize success, or a Christian insisting on nativity scenes in public squares, well, that's just good old-fashioned politics. With a quick sleight of hand, identity becomes something that only marginalized groups have. The term identity politics in this usage obscures rather than illuminates. It's used to diminish and discredit the concerns of weaker groups by making them look self-interested, special pleading in order to clear the agenda for the concerns of stronger groups, which are framed as more rational, proper topics for normal political debate. But in wielding identity as a blade, we have lost it as a lens, blinding ourselves in a bid for political advantage. We're left searching in vain for what we refuse to allow ourselves to see. All politics is influenced by identity. Those identities are most powerful when they are so pervasive as to be either invisible or uncontroversial. American is an identity. So too is Christian. When politicians, including the irreligious, end speeches with "God bless America," it's not because they're making an appeal to a higher power, but because they're making an appeal to our bedrock identities. If you don't believe me, ask yourself why there are so few open atheists or even agnostics in national politics. This does not mean that politics is an equation solved by locating identity. Identity shapes our worldview, but it does not mechanistically decide it. And while we often speak of identity as a singular, It is always a dizzying plural. We have countless identities, some of them in active conflict with each other, others lying dormant until activated by threat or fortune. Much that happens in political campaigns is best understood as a struggle over which identities voters will inhabit come election day. Will they feel like workers exploited by their bosses, or heartlanders dismissed by coastal elites? Will they vote as patriotic traditionalists offended by NFL players who kneel during the national anthem, or as parents worried about the climate their children will inhabit? What we are often fighting over in American politics is group identity and status, fights that express themselves in debates over policy and power, but cannot be truly reconciled by either. Health policy is positive sum, but identity conflict is zero sum. The book Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And happy Monday, happy Map Day, indeed. The stock market collapsed this morning, went down, I think it was 7%, was when they hit the circuit breakers on the S&P, and paused trading for 15 minutes. It's down around 5% right now, which is 1,350 points. This is, basically the market never should have gotten as high as it was. It got as high as it was because the Fed was engaging in stimulative activity during a time that we weren't in a recession. And they've been doing that for 3-4 years now. And it's just, if you look at 20 and 30-year pictures of the stock market, graphs of the stock market, you see how unusual this market is right now. Something I've been warning about for some time. But there's also, this morning, Donald Trump, honest to God, tweeted a picture of himself playing a violin. Or he retweeted it. It was Dan Scavino who tweeted it. He retweeted it, saying something like, I don't know what this means. Oh, we've got it. He's saying, I don't know what this means, but I think it's something good, or words to that effect. He, honest to God, tweeted a picture of himself playing the violin. It's like this morning he's trying to tell us in the most obvious way possible that he doesn't give a damn if America burns to the ground. He also doesn't want people from an infected cruise ship because he, quote, likes the numbers where they are. Those numbers shouldn't go up because of, quote, something that's not our fault. The bottom line here, Trump doesn't give a damn about you and me, never would unless we inherited a pile of money and could afford to buy one of his condos. Then we could join Mar-a-Lago and become one of his policy advisors, like the 3 guys down there at Mar-a-Lago who are running the VA with absolutely no oversight or responsibility for the outcome. Seriously, there are 3 guys at Mar-a-Lago who are running the Veterans Administration. You can Google it. America is on fire, and our leader is fiddling and tweeting pictures of himself fiddling. What could possibly go wrong? Right? What could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, South Korea has tested over 180,000 people for the coronavirus. The CDC has tested 500 people in our entire country. There probably, there are a few other places that are testing. We've probably got a few thousand who've been tested. But because of Trump's incompetence, our nation is completely unprepared for a friggin' pandemic. And yes, CNN this morning started officially calling it a pandemic. Pandemic means a worldwide epidemic. But there are some, because of Trump's incompetence, our nation is completely unprepared for this pandemic. But there are some small steps that states, cities, and businesses could take without Trump. For example, in China right now, when you travel through an airport, as you're going through security, as it were, that security scanner isn't just a magnetometer to see if you're carrying a gun. It's also got a little temperature thing that measures your temperature. Those of you watching on TV, you can see I'm holding a little thing here that looks kind of like a radar gun. And I bought this on Amazon for $20. And I can point this, and it's got a little laser pointer on it, and I can point it at my forehead. I'm not going to put it in my eye, but I can put it on my forehead, and it will tell me that the temperature of my forehead right now is 94.2 degrees. So I can extrapolate from that. If that's the average of people's foreheads, you could say, well, I don't have a fever. So think about this for a minute. Louise and I were having dinner with two of our grandchildren last night, and one's in middle school, the other's in high school, and I'm like, do you have security guards at your schools? Oh, yeah. Schools have security guards, right? So why don't you have that security guard who's supposed to be checking kids for guns and stuff? Why don't you just have them stand at the front door and very quickly measure the temperature of every kid coming in, and if anybody has a fever, send them home. That's the first sign of a coronavirus infection is a fever. Why don't we do this in our airports? China is doing this in their airports. You can't get on an airplane in China if you have a fever. This thing costs $20 on Amazon. Why isn't, every time I go through airport security, there's like a half a dozen people standing around at the TSA, check line, waiting for the moment when somebody says, I need somebody to frisk somebody, or bag alert. Well, while they're standing around there, why don't they be pointing these infrared measuring devices at people's foreheads and saying, hey, wait a minute, buddy, you've got a fever. You should probably go home instead of getting on this airplane. And I'm not even saying that, you must. But anyway. Meanwhile, we've got a Democratic primary coming up tomorrow. It's going to be a big deal. I don't know how this is going to play out. It's going to be real interesting. I do think that tomorrow is going to be make it or break it for Bernie. Friday is the debate where we get to see Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders one-on-one for an hour or two. And if that happens, it's going to be real interesting and real illuminating, particularly given that Donald Trump has already started running ads on Facebook of Joe Biden's, shall we say, flubs. Where he kind of seems to forget what he's talking about in the middle of a sentence or rambles on about the curly hairs on his legs and stuff. They're actually, the Trump campaign has put, presumably, they're spending $1 million on Facebook on these ads, so presumably a chunk of that is going on these particular ads. I retweeted a couple of them yesterday by way of saying, I am concerned about this. What shall we do? What can we do? How do we get ahead of this? Nobody tweeted back to me what I thought was a useful response. And so I deleted the tweets this morning. Because I don't want to seem like I'm retweeting Trump's crap on the one hand. On the other hand, I do think that, my position will be, and I said this actually, somebody said, wait a minute, are you trying to tell me that you're so loyal to the Democratic Party that if it turns out that Joe Biden is getting senile, you'll still vote for him? And my answer was yes. If he's the nominee, yeah, absolutely. Dwight Eisenhower had a heart attack and didn't run the country for almost a year. Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. Franklin Roosevelt was out his last year. He was having a crisis. The debate is Sunday. I said it was Friday. Excuse me. And the last 2 years of his presidency, Ronald Reagan wasn't there. It's not, we've got to stop this salvationist thinking. I've gone on those rants before that, that one person is going to save us. No. What you're looking at with Trump, yes, you've got an incompetent guy in the White House. But what he has done is he has staffed the entire federal bureaucracy with either incompetence or empty chairs, literally empty chairs. A third of the civilian positions in the Pentagon are right now empty, unfilled. If somebody told Trump, listen, I want you to take apart the American government, dismantle it and destroy it so badly that America will be unprepared for a major crisis. If somebody had told Trump to do that, he couldn't have done a better job. So, even if Joe Biden can't string together a coherent sentence, and I'm assuming that, he can actually. We all have bad days. But even if he can't, I trust that he would staff the government with competent people and we could get back to something resembling normalcy. I would prefer a progressive revolution, but I'll take normal too. And I think most Americans will. So anyhow, that's coming up. Oh, I didn't finish my rant about these forehead scanning temperature measurers, right? Yes, don't put the light in your eye. They've got actually, this is not designed specifically to take your temperature. This is designed, I mean, I can measure the temperature of the wall over there. It's 72.1 degrees, that wall. That's what it's designed for. But there are other ones that are also $20 that are specifically, they do the internal math and say, okay, if your forehead is 94.3 degrees, that means that your body temperature is 98.6. And it displays body temperature, even though it's looking at your forehead. So anyhow, number one, I was saying, why isn't TSA doing this? Number two, why aren't we having our security guards in our schools do this? But let's extend that. I mean, I said we had dinner last night with our kids, or actually it was with one of our kids and her husband and his kids, or their kids, and we went out to a restaurant because it was restaurant week in Portland, and the reservation was made like a month ago. And so, okay, we'll do this. But generally speaking, Louise and I are not going out to restaurants anymore. In fact, we're not going out anywhere anymore unless we have to. It's like, and it's not that I'm panicking or freaked out, and I don't think you should be. It's because as long as we have an incompetent administration and we have no test kits, we don't have a friggin' clue what's going on. Oregon actually has a daily newsletter that they're sending out from the Oregon Health Department. And I signed up for it last week. Yesterday, we got 7 new coronavirus cases. The day before, it was 4 new cases. The day before that, it was 3 new cases here in Oregon, just in the state of Oregon. And they're scattered all over the place. And they seem to be, either people who had contact with somebody who was known to have it, or people who were just, several of them, I think it was 7 of them, were just people who flew domestically. Well, how did that happen? I'm taking care of myself, and I'm washing my hands a lot. So, because I was flying domestic a couple of weeks ago. So, before I handle a doorknob, when I leave here to go to the bathroom or something, I'm going to squirt some Purell on my hands so that I'm not endangering Sean and Nate in the event, right? And if I get a fever, I'm going to be doing this show from home, or somebody else will be in here doing it on my, in my behalf. But to extend this, when we went into that restaurant last night to have dinner, and I realized maybe it would have freaked out people. It would have reassured me if the maitre d' at that restaurant had said, let me check your forehead temperature. How about at the hotel that I checked into, last week in Chicago at the airport? The guy could have checked my temperature. Bing! I mean, he could have just had a device that was inconspicuous behind him that would tell him my temperature. How about office buildings starting to do this? We have security people. I mean, we don't need to rely on Donald. I realize I'm sounding like a Republican here. There are solutions in the private sector. Or do you think that I'm being hysterical? Do you think that I'm way out there? If Trump won't take care of us, if Trump, if our federal government is so incompetent, they can't even figure out who has this disease and who doesn't, maybe we should start taking care of ourselves.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
At least until we get someone competent in the White House. And welcome back. Ken in Olympia, Washington. Hey, Ken. What's up?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm going online, and I'm seeing a lot of Sanders supporters stating vehemently that they will only vote for him. If he's not the nominee, they will not vote, or certainly they will not vote for Biden.
I have seen one person say that on Twitter in the last 2 days, and that person had three followers and 1 tweet. I'm pretty sure it was a brand new bot. Are you seriously hearing this from people? I mean, nobody has had to. Actually, we had one guy call into the show to say that last week, and again, he was a brand new caller. May well have been a Republican troll. I'm not so worried about that, Ken. I think that the vote out there yeah, you're probably going to lose some young people, and you're probably going to get a lot of young people who are, and it's not just young people, you're probably going to get some Bernie supporters who, if Bernie isn't the nominee, are going to, loudly complain. And they may not have voted anyway, or, maybe they're not going to vote. But I think that the turnout, if Biden is the nominee, he's sort of promising, same old. I still think that people view Trump as an existential threat.
I hope you're right, because I feel it's more extensive than you seem to have perceived it, but my fingers are crossed.
Yeah.
Just in case I'm correct, could you give some talking points to people who might share my thought about the risk of them not voting?
Yeah, if you don't vote, you're going to end up with Donald Trump for another 4 years, and this time he will not feel constrained. It will be the end of American democracy. How's that?
Yeah, that's powerful. Okay,
well,
thank you.
I believe that to be true. I mean, this is not an overstatement. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ken. Good to hear from you. Susan in Snellville, Georgia. Hey, Susan, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
So far, so good. What's up?
Yeah, me too. Resisting every day, resisting. I'm calling to kind of make a statement and to inform your listeners to please join a Remove Trump group. I do not believe that we are going to have an election. I believe that Trump is using the coronavirus to his benefit so that he can try to deter some of the election and the pre-election, the rallies and everything going on for the Democrats and so forth. I think he's going to use that to his advantage. And I think that it would behoove all of Americans, all of Democrats, to take these 5 groups or so and some civil rights activists, get a large group of people similar to the Million Man March, and let's take over D.C., because that's the only way you can remove a fascist and a dictator is to take to the streets, because they're not going to let us have a fair election.
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out, Susan, and there's no doubt in my mind that if he tries to pull something, America will push back. But, that said, Trump trying to use this, there's, I read some stuff online over the weekend about how, Trump is going to say, the coronavirus, don't go to the polls, thinking that'll suppress the vote. But this isn't like the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, where Reagan could just marginalize gay people and ignore them and let them die. This thing, you've got, Ted Cruz is in quarantine right now because he shook somebody's hand at CPAC. The head of the New York and New Jersey Port Authority is actually sick with coronavirus right now. This hits Republicans. In fact, it's right now at the political level. You've got 2 Republican politicians. Ted Cruz is one. I don't recall the name of the other one. He's a congressman who are both in quarantine because of the, I don't know if it was CPAC or APAC, but one of those things. And so I don't think it's going to cut that way. Susan, thanks for the call. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Never mind. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Let's see here. Pam in Chicago. Hey, Pam, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Calling about independent voters. Tom, it's interesting to me, the traditional Democratic elected officials, they're saying they can't really endorse Bernie because he's not really a Democratic nominee, right?
Well, that's one of the arguments that's made, yeah.
Right, but here's my pushback on that. He's an independent. He ran as an independent in Vermont, correct?
Correct.
He caucuses with the Democratic Party.
Always has.
So, are we telling independent voters that we don't want their vote in the Democratic elections?
That's a good point,
Do you see where
Pam.
I'm going with this, Tom?
Yeah, I do.
You want the independent voters to vote Democratic.
Yeah, they're a larger, in most states, the independents are a larger chunk of the electorate than either Republicans or Democrats. It depends on the state, but yes.
Sure, but the hypocrisy in that. But we can't have an independent person who is fighting for the people.
Right.
We can't have him run. So if those are your rules, then why not say, well, you have to be a registered Democratic elected official in order to run in our election?
Yeah.
That troubles me.
Yeah, I get it, Pam. I mean, it's just, this is kitchen sink time. The Bernie people are throwing at Biden that he's got dementia or something, and the Biden people are throwing at Bernie that he's not really a Democrat and he's a communist. This is
about policies.
I agree. I would much rather have a conversation about policy.
Thank you.
And let me add to that, Pam. I think that, regardless of Bernie Sanders, what happens with Bernie Sanders in this election, in this primary election, and for that matter, any future election, Bernie Sanders has already won. If you think back to 5 years ago, 6 years ago, before Bernie got into the primary against Hillary, what the debate was in the United States. We were in the Democratic Party in the United States. The Democratic Party was still debating whether or not having a public option was even viable. Right? We're now talking about Medicare for all. The Democratic Party was debating whether or not to undo the 2005 bankruptcy bill so that young people who have student debt could declare bankruptcy. Now we're talking about loan forgiveness and free college. I mean, it's just as two examples. We had Bernie Sanders' candidacy just by itself, and Bernie, of course, by force of personality, and a lot of credit goes to Elizabeth Warren too for coming along and saying, listen, I am not the, quote, socialist. I am a capitalist. I am a college professor. I created an agency within the federal government. I'm part of the establishment. And I agree with Bernie on all these issues, right? So between the two of them, they have mainstreamed this stuff into the Democratic Party to the point where I'm convinced that if Bernie doesn't get the nomination and Joe Biden becomes the nominee, that he will not be able to resist the pressure to start moving substantially in very progressive directions in short order. Which is again, my preference would be that we had a real progressive Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. I'm willing to accept any outcome, and I'm not going to try and put my thumb on the scale here. I guess I am, but it's like now is. I guess Wednesday is the time that we should be talking about this, after the vote on Tuesday. But Pam, thank you. Your points are really well made, and especially that one about independence. Oh, he's an independent. Oh, you don't want independent to participate with the Democratic Party? Okay, I think that seems a little short-sighted. That was brilliant, Pam. Thank you very much. 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back with more of your calls right after this. Of the week of the Free Speech TV, spring fund drive, and your essentially last chance this week to kick in a few bucks and help Free Speech TV keep going forward. This is such an important television network. It's such an important time, and I think I've said all this so many times, but it probably can't be said too frequently. We really need your help. Free Speech TV needs your help. And if you haven't already called 877-378-8669 and made a contribution, small contributions, monthly contributions, they're the best kind. Large contributions, of course, are appreciated and, are important. I think our average contribution is probably between $75 and $100 in that neighborhood, but we've been getting a lot more $3 and $5 contributions, $10 a month contributions, and that's really great because while it doesn't help us hit our goals this month or for this quarter, what it does mean is that we're building a foundation moving forward. So in future fund drives, it'll be less painful, and we'll know that we've got something there, and it's going to continue coming in and all that sort of thing. Looking at it from my end, I mean, it's pretty amazing. The numbers that we're raising right now less than a third of what we were raising 4 years ago. And I don't know why. It's just, but, here it is. So and I know that our viewership has expanded considerably, so we really need your help. Probably it's a big, political year and people are giving to politicians, but please call now, 877-378-8669. We really need your help. With a $20 contribution, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. I saw one of these last week. I think it was in Chicago. It might have been in Minneapolis. I'm not sure, but I was, at one of the events, one of the book signings I was going to, and it was so cool. Oh, look at that. Or the Free Speech TV car magnet, which works like a bumper sticker, only it doesn't have glue on it. That helps, to help get the vote out. I'm voting Are You. With a $50 gift, there is the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. And we really do need the people to get out there and just effing vote, right? I mean, it's just, and these are amazing times. This morning, I'm not making this up. This morning, or late last night, Trump tweeted a photo of himself fiddling. Seriously. Trump tweeted a picture of himself fiddling. I mean, he was retweeting a tweet from Dan Scavino, one of his advisors, and it was obviously, Photoshop because he doesn't know how to play the violin. But here's Trump playing the fiddle. I think that the day that they start, the week or the month or whatever in junior high school, when they studied the history of the Roman Empire, I think he didn't show up, or maybe that was, he was, the little Richie Rich boy. Maybe that was one of the days that he had his surrogates sit in for him if they taught that in college. But he's literally fiddling while our country burns, economically, health-wise, infrastructure, education. A third of the offices in the Pentagon are not filled. The appointable positions. Our government is just being taken apart. Anyhow, back to the premiums. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice. There's 3 different things you can pick one of. Either the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $240 gift, join us for a meet and greet online, and we'll have an off-the-record, frank, candid conversation, and it can be a lot of fun. It can be very interesting. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack from Free Speech TV. That's the Free Speech TV postcards to send to friends and family, the car magnet, it's like a bumper sticker to get the vote out, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the Hidden History, you get all 3 of my books, all 3 of my Hidden History books that have come out so far. Hidden History of the Supreme Court, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, and the Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And, this makes a great gift, by the way. And all are autographed by me, by the author. And with a $1,000 gift, if you're still willing to get on an airplane, maybe we've got to come up with a different $1,000 gift. I don't know, given what's going on right now. But you can come to Portland and hang out with us and see the studio and all that kind of stuff. And we do have hand sanitizer here. So, and so far, so good, right? We're still here. Anyhow, bottom line, Free Speech TV needs your help. We need your help. Please call now at 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. Coming up on the Science Revolution this week, first, Trump is using the same logic on COVID-19 that he used for pesticides and pollution. And I'll explain why that's not a good thing. Nilay Marian, Forestry and Biodiversity Framework Coordinator with Friends of the Earth International, is here. Can we stop mass extinctions? Eva Hamer, Legal Coordinator of Direct Action Everywhere, drops by on her article, Why I Went Topless at Costco. Plus, Geeky Science. This is what happens when public transit is free. But wait, there's more. Tune in to the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Somebody tweeted at me, Tom, take a breath. You sound like you are panicking. You're not going to restaurants. What? Let me just share. There are a couple things I want to share with you, and then I'll get back to your phone calls. And by the way, the second hour of our program, Congressman Ro Khanna is going to be with us. He is the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and he'll be with us for the whole hour taking your calls. And in the third hour, we're going to be talking about a public citizen is going to be here, a representative public citizen, and how they and 70 other organizations are concerned that part of the delay at the Trump administration in getting testing kits out isn't so much incompetence as it is that they're trying to figure out a way to make some big bucks with these coronavirus test kits for some of their corporate buddies. You know, break government and then let the corporations come in. I don't know. We'll have a conversation about that in the third hour. But Judd Legum, or Legum, I guess it's pronounced, whose newsletter, popular.info, I often reference on this program because Judd does just some amazing reporting. And Judd his newsletter today is titled Free Breadsticks During a Coronavirus Outbreak. And he says, before you drown your anxiety about the coronavirus in a bowl of never-ending pasta, consider this. In most states, the staff at Olive Garden does not receive paid sick leave. This means if anyone working at the restaurant feels sick, they could be forced to choose between staying home and paying their rent. The Olive Garden is one of the restaurant brands operated by Darden. That company employs about 170,000 hourly restaurant employees across 1,779 restaurants in the United States, making it one of the largest full-service restaurant operators in the country. Except where required by law, Darden does not provide any of its restaurant employees with paid sick leave. And so, by the way, the CDC's guidelines for coronavirus, they suggest that companies should, quote, ensure that your sick leave policies are flexible. So Judd reached out to a manager at an Olive Garden in Falls Creek, Virginia, who said that coronavirus outbreak or no, we're not going to pay employees who call in sick. Ain't going to happen. And then the manager instructed somebody not to talk to Judd anymore about this. In the Indianapolis Yard House, another Darden restaurant chain, a server there told Popular Information that restaurant staff do not get paid sick leave and get written up if they fail to call in sick at least 2 hours in advance. The company has not offered to pay employees who are sick to stay home. And so, yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons, we've talked about this before in the context of flu and in the context of, just public health. One of the reasons that so many people get the flu in the United States and get colds in the United States, and we actually do have, higher numbers in that regard than some other countries, is because we don't have paid sick leave in the United States. And so people go to restaurants, whether it's grabbing a cup of coffee at the coffee place or Starbucks, or they, or Olive Garden or whatever, McDonald's, people go to work sick. And if they go to work with a cold or the flu, well, it's just a cold or the flu. Yes, flu kills 35,000 people. Trump just tweeted about that. Oh, the flu kills 35,000 people. We've only had 100 die, so, or 50 or whatever it is. So what's the big deal? Markets don't close because of the flu. Well, yeah, the people that flu kills are the people who are very, very vulnerable. The people who coronavirus kills are not just the people who are very, very vulnerable, but people who are just kind of a little marginal. So, and it kills like 20 times as many. But anyhow, one of the reasons is because of our sick leave policies. That flu season is as bad as it is in the United States, in my opinion. I did want to talk about oil prices, too, and then I'm going to pick up your phone calls here. Saudi Arabia and Russia got into a pissing war over the weekend. Forgive the phrase. I don't know how else to describe this. For the last 3 years, these two countries have been working together since 2016 to hold down production to maintain high gas or oil prices, basically. And by high, I'm talking about, in the neighborhood of $50 a barrel. Russia needs oil to be above $40 a barrel in order for the ruble and the Russian economy not to be hit badly. And here in the United States, if the price of oil goes below $40 a barrel, more or less, it varies from state to state, company to company, but basically if it goes below $40 a barrel, we start seeing widespread bankruptcies. One of the largest issuers, I believe maybe the largest issuer, of what are called BBB rated bonds, sometimes referred to as high-grade junk bonds. Largest issuer, American fracking companies. They call them shale oil companies now, but they're basically frackers. Fracking, the whole fracking industry is running on debt. And yeah, interest rates going down, I suppose, is a good thing, but it still costs them in the neighborhood of $35 to $40 a barrel to produce oil. It's a very expensive way to produce oil. So anyhow, Russia said, we'd like to wait a few months and see how this coronavirus, because oil demand is down worldwide, because airlines are canceling flights and people are not driving places, and industrial production is down, so oil demand is down. So the oil price has been going down. And Russia said, let's just play this out a little longer. Mohammed bin Salman, this is from a piece in the Financial Times today, but under Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince, the kingdom has gained a reputation for risky and unpredictable moves. So what did he do? He said to Russia, well, screw you guys. And the horse you rode in on. And I'm serious about that. I mean, well, not literally, but because what he said is we're going to open the spigots. We're not only going to not support the price of oil, we're going to drive it down. And so Saudi Arabia has actually increased production, and Moscow is saying, okay, two can play at that game. We will increase production. And so oil futures were at, I believe they were at $32 a barrel this morning. Now, what this means is that 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, and maybe not even that long, maybe 2 or 3 months down the road, you're going to start seeing a wave of layoffs. Is where it's going to start in the American shale oil industry and the American fracking industry. Because, hey, why produce something and lose money on every barrel you produce? And then you're going to see these companies declaring bankruptcy and going out of business. And then you're going to see all these junk bonds being defaulted. And then you're going to see, crisis in the commercial bond market. And then you're going to see a serious, and by the way, the Russians are in my opinion, are very happy to hurt the U.S. shale industry. It's one of their major competitors. Plus, they're still upset that we have inserted ourselves into this Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline to Germany. We're trying to stop this, which would hurt the Russian fossil fuel business. And we still have sanctions on Rosneft, their state-backed oil company. So, basically now the Russians and the Saudis were trying to hold the prices up so that they could both do well. Now they're letting prices collapse. It's going to hurt Russia over the short term. Saudi Arabia, who knows? I mean, you got bin Salman now has arrested 3 senior members of the royal family, which is causing a lot of people to speculate that his father, or maybe his uncle, whoever it is, who's the king right now, is about to be overthrown or about to step down and hand the reins over to bin Salman, and he's moving competition out of the way. So that may have something to do with this too, which brings us to that old metaphor, when the elephants dance, the mice get trampled. And in this case, the price of oil. So Trump is saying, the price of oil coming down is great. It means the price of gasoline is going to go down. Well, no, it means the profitability of the oil refineries in the United States is going to go up. You think they're going to lower, if the oil goes from $50 a barrel down to $30 a barrel, what is that, a 40% drop in price? Do you think that you're going to see gasoline prices go down 40%? No, you'll see them go down 10%. So the refiners in the United States are going to become more profitable. But that's going to be about it. So anyway, that's my rant, and back to you. Deb in Saginaw, Michigan. Hey, Deb, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to talk.
Oh, Deb, if I may interrupt you just for a moment. I didn't conclude my rant about the oil prices. What I'm pointing out is that about half of this stock market drop that you saw this morning was caused by the coronavirus, maybe. More than half of it certainly was caused by this oil thing. And this may be short term. It may only last a few weeks or a month before the Russians and the Saudis decide to resolve this, or Trump gets involved on behalf of U.S. oil producers. But it may not. And if it continues for a while and oil prices are around $30 a barrel for more than a few months, we're going to see a major crash here in the United States, in my humble opinion. It's going to get real ugly. So anyhow, end of rant. Deb, to you. You want to talk about coronavirus?
Yes, I do, because I'm not hearing another way that this could be possibly being transmitted. And I'm hearing all about, stay home, cancel events, don't be in crowded places.
It's all about physical contact by and large, yeah.
Right, exactly. But nobody's talking about what all of us have in our pockets, and that's money.
Right.
Change and money. I mean, we've got coin-operated laundromats, we've got party stores, we've got, parking meters.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like maybe that's why the kids 12 and younger aren't getting it, because they don't handle money.
No, I don't think so. And I think that odds are the money in your pocket, unless it was put there by somebody who was infected in the last hour or two. There was, for a while there, they thought that this virus could last on surfaces for days. The latest stuff that I've been reading suggests that that's probably hours, and it depends on the surface, and it depends on the temperature, and it depends on whether it's exposed to wind or to sunlight. I think that with regard to money, the danger would be if somebody had coronavirus and had just coughed into their hand and then reached into their pocket and took a quarter and put it in your hand, you would be definitely exposed. But if somebody, if that quarter goes into a cash register at McDonald's and it sits there for a few hours, and somebody who is not infected takes it out of the cash register and gives it to you as change, I doubt you have to worry. And with regard to paper money, I think the probability of worrying is a whole lot less. I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves here and totally freak out.
Right. Well,
okay.
I wasn't thinking about paper money, more the coins.
Yeah. Yeah, but there it's like, be careful who you're interacting with, I think is the thing. Carry around one of these infrared thermometers where you can measure somebody's temperature from 3 feet away. Deb, thanks for the call. It's nice to hear from you, and I think that we should be talking about this coronavirus thing in a larger context, in a larger frame, particularly since Trump is not helping the situation at all. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Yeah, back after Chernobyl, I got a Geiger counter and used to walk around German grocery markets looking for radiation. I actually found a bunch of it. That's the bad news. And welcome back. Rick in Napa Vine, Washington. Hey, Rick. Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
How you doing, Tom?
I'm great. What's up?
Well, I'd like to point out that it's the moderates who chose to ignore the scientists for 50 years, bringing us to the brink of climate collapse. It's the moderates who enabled the military budget to get as big as it did and fight wars like our 19-year current action. It's the moderates who have refused since Truman to bring us single-payer health care. I think the time for moderates is over, and if we don't get rid of the moderates, we're facing the end.
In principle, in large structure, I don't disagree with you, Rick. I would replace the word moderate with the word neoliberals, because the people who have positioned themselves in the Democratic Party as moderates ever since 1992, principally the Clintons, are actually neoliberals, and which is
and most of the Democratic Party is that, Tom.
Probably about half of it. Yeah, I agree.
Most of our economic establishment are neoliberals who want to control the agenda for their profits.
Yes,
and it's bringing about the end of the world.
Yeah, and you're right, Rick. And that said, I think their day has ended. Even if we end up with a guy who has always been a neoliberal and a so-called moderate, Joe Biden, as president, I think the pressure is so great, from the climate pressure to the health pressure, particularly now that we've got a pandemic going on, to the economic pressure because we're on the edge of a major crash. I mean, all these pressures are building to the point where I don't think that neoliberalism is going to survive another 2 or 3 years. I really don't. I really think that we're right on the edge. We're on the cusp of an FDR moment. And, it's always a crisis that brings these things about. The Great Depression opened the space for FDR to go from being a moderate and somewhat corrupt New York machine politician to becoming the president who we love. The crisis of the assassination of John Kennedy and then Martin Luther King opened a gap for Lyndon Johnson, a very corrupt, power broker, moderate, Southern supporter of segregation, frankly, to become the guy who brought us the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, Medicare and Medicaid. And I think that this coronavirus and this crash, and it's playing out, by the way, almost exactly the way I described it in my book, The Crash of 2016. We just, the publisher never should have put 2016 in the title. It should have just been The Great Crash, because the book is out of print now. But this is playing out exactly the way I described it was going to play out. And I think that this is my happy talk. I get it. I'm optimistic about this. But I actually believe it's true that even if you have moderates running the country, which is like, or neoliberals running the country, which has been the case for both Democratic presidents and all Republican presidents ever since Reagan, even if that's the case, I think that we are poised for a progressive revolution. It is happening. And they're trying to hold it back, and the media's trying to hold it back, and everybody's trying to hold it back, and maybe they can hold back Bernie. But Bernie has ceded the field, and this is going to happen. We'll be back. It's 51 minutes past the hour. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Gary in Naples, Florida. Hey, Gary, what's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Thom Hartmann. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Gary.
Yes, this Gary. Yes, if you don't mind, about 3 months ago, we had a talk, and we rounded up, and then I'm going to go on quickly to my second point, that we had a conversation, and we both agreed there was going to be, at least I believe I said this on your air, there was going to be an event. We don't know what the event was going to be, and the state has it. It's this unfortunate virus that's going on here. So, secondly, I have a prediction to make. I believe, I'm going to be on record here. I know it's out there, but I believe this for quite a while. I believe I know what the ticket is in November for the Democrats.
What's
and
that?
we will beat the liar in chief, by the way. Don't worry about it. This ticket will beat it. You ready?
Sure. I'm listening.
Joe Biden, Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah.
Now, having said
I'm not
that,
excited. I mean, if Biden's the nominee, I'd much rather see Elizabeth Warren as the vice president, or maybe even Kamala Harris. But
why?
Because Elizabeth Warren is a good, solid progressive, and Kamala Harris has moved in that direction very aggressively, and also she's. I do think that if we're not going to have a woman at the top of the ticket. A woman should be Joe Biden's going to be a one-term president, and so whoever's VP is poised to become. Yeah, I think so. Wait a
minute, Tom. This is a conversation between me and you. Quickly, I don't agree with you on that because I believe. Look, am I a progressive? I'm a progressive too, and I'm sorry to say, and I believe Sanders should be the nominee, but we're not there yet. Culturally, you understand what I'm saying? I know you do.
I don't think it's cultural. I think it's the media. But anyway, continue.
No, I think it's cultural too. In addition, I think it's all. Now, having said that, I believe Klobuchar is recognized as being a moderate, being experienced. I believe that's the ticket. We'll have to see what happens. Whatever it takes, the greater good must prevail. We need the liar in chief out.
Yeah.
O-U-T out.
Yeah. Well said, Gary. Thank you. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, I just wanted to say that a lot of the issue with Trump and his philosophy and those of his administration is it's based on two things. Number one, racism doesn't exist.
Hey, if I can just interject and respond to that. Yeah. Louise and I, when we were driving to dinner to meet our daughter and her husband last night, we were listening to Fox News on Sirius XM on the radio, and which we do from time to time. Just that's about as much as we can tolerate is on a 10-minute drive. And they were doing this thing on the 1776 project, which was pushing back on the 1619 project of the Lion New York Times. And they've got this, and they had this African-American guy on who was running the 1776 project to prove that racism has ended in America, or words to that effect. It was astonishing. It was just astonishing.
Right. And the other thing is they believe that truth, accuracy, it springs from power, the superior application of force.
Right.
This is how they quote unquote, pretend that they. I don't know. They're obsessed with.
That's a characteristic of authoritarian personalities, particularly authoritarian follower personalities.
Yes, and so let me come to like I told you before, Tom, my background is in foreign intelligence. I study our adversaries, all right? Now, this sort of thing only benefits our adversaries. What we have to decide is, our two primary adversaries. What we have to decide, is it better to be right or is it better to be powerful? Now, obviously, Bernie Sanders is a superior candidate to Joe Biden, okay? But both Bernie and Biden have the same problem in a sense. They have years and years and years of public statements that this Trump administration can dissect and look for vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities in Bernie's case, yes. But the problem is Trump is the incumbent, all right? And so what they're going to do is they're going to portray Biden. They're going to pick out comments over the years, over a span of time, that makes Biden.
They're already doing that. Donald Trump is running ads on Facebook right now with clips of Biden sounding like he's senile, interspersed with clips of largely Democratic commentators saying, "Oh my God, did he just say that?"
Right. And the reason why
it's running on Facebook right now.
Yeah, and the reason why it's so important that we decide it is better to be right than powerful is because, look, international law clearly says that in a time of war, you can use whatever weapon you have at your disposal. It doesn't matter as long as it ends the war quickly. All right, and what we're doing is we're escalating with Trump to a confrontation with Russia and China that's going to be devastating to millions.
Well, it's, I hope and pray you're wrong, Dave. I really and truly do. But, I could build that case. I could argue against the case, but I could also build that case. We need somebody in the White House who's stable, who actually is a stable genius. Dave, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So we've got a new video up for regular supporters of our program over at ThomHartmann.com, and this is about just a totally bizarre story about these three guys with no VA experience, not even veterans, who are all big shots down at Mar-a-Lago, that Donald Trump has put in charge of the Veterans Administration functionally. And their association, one of them is the head of Marvel Entertainment, their association with Johnson & Johnson and the New York Stock Exchange, and Johnson & Johnson, the big drug company, taking this very, very cheap chemical, ketamine, tweaking the molecule a little bit, and rolling it out as a new anti-suicide drug, Spravato, that in clinical trials caused 6 people to die 3 of them by suicide, and none of the people taking the placebo to die. And now Trump is telling the VA, you have to buy this highly inflated price drug from Johnson & Johnson, and the Democrats want to know what's up with the VA crowd, guys. Check it out. It's at ThomHartmann.com.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Bum. Well, happy Monday. It's the final week of the Free Speech TV, spring fund drive. And your essentially last chance this week to kick in a few bucks and help Free Speech TV keep going and keep going forward. This is such an important television network. It's such an important time. And I think I've said all this so many times, but it probably can't be said too frequently. We really need your help. Free Speech TV needs your help. And if you haven't already called 877-378-8669 and made a contribution, small contributions, monthly contributions, they're the best kind. Large contributions, of course, are appreciated and, are important. I think our average contribution is probably between $75 and $100 in that neighborhood, but we've been getting a lot more $3 and $5 contributions, $10 a month contributions, and that's really great because while it doesn't help us hit our goals this month or for this quarter, what it does mean is that we're building a foundation moving forward. So in future fund drives, it'll be less painful, and we'll know that we've got something there, and it's going to continue coming in and all that sort of thing. Looking at it from my end, I mean, it's pretty amazing. The numbers that we're raising right now are less than a third of what we were raising 4 years ago, and I don't know why. It's just, but here it is. So and I know that our viewership has expanded considerably. So we really need your help. Probably it's a big political year and people are giving to politicians, but please call now 877-378-8669. We really need your help. With a $20 contribution, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. I saw one of these last week. I think it was in Chicago. It might have been in Minneapolis. I'm not sure, but I was, at one of the events, one of the book signings I was going to, and it was so cool. Oh, look at that. Or the Free Speech TV car magnet, which works like a bumper sticker, only it doesn't have glue on it. That helps, to help get the vote out. I'm voting Are You. With a $50 gift, there is the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. And we really do need the people to get out there and just effing vote, right? I mean, it's just, and these are amazing times. This morning, I'm not making this up. This morning, or late last night, Trump tweeted a photo of himself fiddling. Seriously. Trump tweeted a picture of himself fiddling. I mean, he was retweeting a tweet from Dan Scavino, one of his advisors, and it was obviously, Photoshop because he doesn't know how to play the violin. But here's Trump playing the fiddle. I think that the day that they start, the week or the month or whatever in junior high school, when they studied the history of the Roman Empire, I think he didn't show up, or maybe that was, he was, the little Richie Rich boy. Maybe that was one of the days that he had his surrogates sit in for him if they taught that in college. But he's literally fiddling while our country burns, economically, health-wise, infrastructure, education. A third of the offices in the Pentagon are not filled. The appointable positions. Our government is just being taken apart. Anyhow, back to the premiums. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice. There's 3 different things you can pick one of. Either the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $240 gift, join us for a meet and greet online, and we'll have an off-the-record, frank, candid conversation, and it can be a lot of fun. It can be very interesting. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack from Free Speech TV. That's the Free Speech TV postcards to send to friends and family, the car magnet, it's like a bumper sticker to get the vote out, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the Hidden History, you get all three of my books, all three of my Hidden History books that have come out so far. Hidden History of the Supreme Court, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, and the Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And, this makes a great gift, by the way. And all are autographed by me, by the author. And with a $1,000 gift, if you're still willing to get on an airplane, maybe we've got to come up with a different $1,000 gift. I don't know, given what's going on right now. But you can come to Portland and hang out with us and see the studio and all that kind of stuff. And we do have hand sanitizer here. So, and so far, so good, right? We're still here. Anyhow. Bottom line, Free Speech TV needs your help. We need your help. Please call now at 877-378-8669. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the second hour of our program. As promised, Congressman Ro Khanna is on the line. If you are on hold to talk to me, just hang up or reconfigure your question for Congressman Khanna. And Joyce will be coming through just to make sure that that's possible. But Congressman Khanna is the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He represents the 17th District of California, Silicon Valley, in the U.S. House of Representatives. His website, Khanna, KHANNA.house.gov, and you can tweet him at Rep. Ro, R-O, Khanna. And Congressman Khanna, welcome back to the program.
Tom, it's always great to be on.
It is always such a pleasure having you on. You are so insightful and so thoughtful, and our listeners love these national town halls where they have an opportunity to speak with members of Congress. Before we go to the calls, just real quickly, what's your take on what's going on in Congress right now, on the administration's response to the coronavirus? You had the Dow is down 1,700 points right now. It's probably going to trip the circuit breaker. Well, it'll have to hit 13% down, I think, for the second trip of the circuit breakers. But it looks like this country right now is facing some serious crises. And honest to God, I don't know if you saw this. I should have mentioned it to you on the phone before we got on the air. I don't know if you saw this, but about 16 hours ago, Donald Trump retweeted a photo of Donald Trump playing the violin, playing the fiddle. And I think he didn't I think the day that they studied Rome and Nero in college was one of the days that he was paying somebody to go to class for him, which was a thing back in the 60s. Because he, honest to God, it's like Rome burns while Nero fiddles, and Trump this morning tweeted a picture of himself playing the fiddle. Anyhow, what are your thoughts?
You can't make these things up.
No, you can't. It's right there. It's on his Twitter feed. Anyway. To you, sir.
Well, the reality is this is one of those times in crisis where marketing and branding doesn't work, and that's what Trump is adept at, is how to market things. But here you actually have a crisis, and it's remarkable to me that how inept we have been in dealing with it. Why is it that South Korea has had 100,000 people tested, and we still have less than 1,000 people tested? Why aren't we able to get some form of testing out there? Why did we not use the World Health Organization's test when most other countries have used it? Why is the CDC not reporting anymore the transparency of how many people are being tested? They stopped reporting that, and I had asked the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services, why aren't we being transparent? So this whole response needed a more coordinated, professional effort, and you just haven't seen that.
Two members of Congress right now, Ted Cruz and somebody from the House, both of them Republicans, are in voluntary self-quarantine right now because they shook hands with an infected person at CPAC. Somebody made the comment on one of the shows I was watching a while back that when 20 or 30% of Congress has this thing, suddenly they're going to take it seriously. What are you hearing from your colleagues?
there's a lot of concern. I mean, there's some people who went to the speaker who said, let's have a recess of Congress because all of us are on planes and all of us are in constituencies, meeting people who have been infected. The speaker, I think, understandably doesn't want to create even more panic in the country, and so has resisted that. But there's no doubt that there is concern among members of Congress.
Yeah. So let's pick up some phone calls here. Eric in Erie, Pennsylvania. You are on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Representative Khanna, really great to get you on a question that I think would be of great service to us all. I caught a sort of a roundtable discussion on C-SPAN late last night. It was put on by the Center for American Progress, and they gathered together some former Obama administration people. They had his Ebola response coordinator, one of his assistant attorney generals for national security, a special advisor for health policy, and they did a Q&A of the various aspects of COVID-19 transmission, treatment, what we may face in the future. So my question for you is, as a representative of the co-equal branch of our government, that is the Congress, would it maybe be in the interest of the public that yourself and some of your fellow representatives convene a panel or a committee that could speak directly to the American people for as long as this is going to remain an ongoing concern of some seriousness?
Eric, is your question a variation on Trump is lying to us and the people around him are afraid to tell the truth, therefore Congress should tell the truth? Is that essentially what you're saying?
I'm famous for my politeness, so I wouldn't dare accuse the president.
Okay, I got it. Eric, let's let the congressman answer.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we ought to have hearings with getting the experts out there to help the American public really know what is going on, what they can do. But it's, this is a place really where you need executive leadership. I mean, we've given the money, but the question is, why don't you have someone there coordinating every expert, every technology leader to say, what do we need to do to get testing dispersed? What do we need to do to make sure we have any form of testing, if not just for coronavirus, for people getting sick? And what is the plan to keep healthcare workers safe? There just has, it seems to me, a sense of wishing the problem away and hoping that it's not as bad has been the Trump strategy, and no sense of containment. I mean, the irony is, if I were talking to Donald Trump, I would say the biggest thing if you want to get reelected is not to try to pretend that this is going away, and I don't want to see him get reelected. The biggest thing you need to do is solve the crisis and get people who actually have an interest in solving it.
Amen. Jessica in Riverside, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, I'm so happy to talk to both of you. I wanted to ask, why don't the airlines allow people to carry the little hand sanitizers that are 1 ounce full of the liquid? My daughter has to fly, and I think, Tom, your idea is brilliant. Why are they not taking temperatures already at the airports? Why are they not screening at least that?
Right. Jessica, if it's a 1 ounce bottle, you can take it on an airplane. You can take anything under 3 ounces. The problem is the bottles you buy in the drugstore are typically 5, 6, 7 ounces. I don't know. We got one right here. How much is it? It's 8 ounces. That would not fit on an airplane. But anyhow, let's let the congressman answer. Thank you.
Well, Jessica, I think it's very thoughtful of you to raise these types of points. I mean, it doesn't just have to be that let's have testing for everyone. That's the main thing. But if we can do some small things in the interim, like allowing hand sanitizer maybe to be exempt from the rules about 3 ounces, and we'd have to look at what safety concerns, but at least to look into that, or to look into, as Tom had suggested, having everyone's temperature checked to see if we can avoid people flying who are sick. I mean, I think there are common sense issues that we at least ought to consider. The problem I think people have is there's no plan. They don't get the sense. They get the sense of a lackadaisical approach, that there's not urgency, and then they get the sense that there's not a clear plan. And there's a good leadership. I mean, it's like anything else. It's an art form where you can't get people to panic, but you can't also pretend problems away. And what we need is the appropriate balance and judgment. If someone's going to say this is a serious crisis, here's the plan. We don't need to panic, but we need a clear action items of how to solve it.
Bob in Burlington, Vermont. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, folks. On last week, I went on to the Vermont Our Revolution site and basically said if Bernie doesn't do well in the next primaries, it's time for a decision to be made. Tom, I was going to call you and say we need to make a phone call, but it points out that Joe is not going to have an easy go. Bernie will not have an easy transition the longer this goes on. What are your thoughts on a quick strategy?
I'd add, don't you
Are
think?
you asking whether he... my sense is that Sanders will continue as long as it's clear that he has a path, and people are we're far away from 1991 delegates, which is what you need to get a majority. And we've seen the fluidity of this race. I really think that it's going to come down to the one-on-one debate that Biden and Bernie have. He's going to get a chance to shape his vision for completing the New Deal and a progressive future, and make a contrast. And I think that that's going to be key.
Yeah, and that's going to be Sunday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to juxtapose that with the outcome in the Tuesday election. Congressman Ro Khanna is here with us, taking your calls for the hour. He's the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He represents the Silicon Valley area in California in the U.S. House of Representatives. Khanna, KHANNA.house.gov is his website.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And you can tweet him at Rep, as in representative, R-E-P, Rep, Ro, R-O, Khanna. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Robbie in Portland, Oregon. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi. There's... Oops, 1 second. Okay.
Robbie, you're on the air.
Oh, yes. So South Carolina had closed polls. Massachusetts, huge discrepancies in the exit polls, suggesting that Bernie won these exit polls. Texas had 10%, over 10% of the vote was not count. They found 4 thumb drives, and only the local news media stations are reporting these in there. Why? Is there anything that is the Democratic Party that you're a part of, the progressive wing, are they observing this primary being rigged?
Well, Robbie, I don't believe it is rigged in the point that election officials in these states are engaged in voter fraud or voter tampering. I think that that's something that would require a lot more evidence before launching an allegation like that. I do think that we have to continue to be diligent about making sure that polling places are staying open long enough that people understand how they should be going and voting, and that we're making voting easier. But there are a lot of things that Bernie's up against. I don't think state officials personally are engaged in any form of tampering.
Joe in Cupertino, you're on the air with your congressman.
Oh, congratulations, Congressman Khanna. I think a landslide of like 66% of the vote in the county is pretty great. That's probably one of the highest of any of the Congress people in my county. But, we had about less than 30% turnout, rather in a midterm election. That's pretty normal. But my question is that, they keep saying that the youth didn't show up. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair, because 13% of the people who voted were under the age of 29. Now, 65% of the people that voted were over 65, but the difference then means like maybe 20% of the people that voted were between ages 29 and 65. So the youth showed up. The youth showed up to vote. It's just that nobody showed up to vote as usual. And we talk about voter fraud. It's not voter fraud. It's voter participation that's the problem. In a presidential election, in the last one at least, we had, 60, 70% turnout. Midterm elections are notoriously low, but I don't think it's fair that Mr. Biden gets to suggest that we can't bring the votes. We brought the votes in California. We brought the votes in a lot of the states, like 3% difference. So as the vice chair of the party, I think we have to make sure that we get out our message, which is we are bringing out the voters. that come out and vote.
Let's let Congressman Khanna respond, Joe.
Well, Joe, look, I think we have to continue to do better in getting young people out, and we did do a good job in Nevada. We did a good job in California, but there are other states where we haven't seen the type of increase we need. But I don't think we should be disparaging Bernie Sanders' strategy. We're going to need record turnout in suburban places like we saw in Virginia. We're going to need record turnout among women. We're also going to need record turnout among young people and working class families that Bernie's talking about to beat Donald Trump, because his whole strategy is banked on getting massive turnout for his side.
Yeah, he's definitely running a base strategy or a base campaign this year. I guess, the Republicans have been doing that since Reagan. Anyhow, Congressman Ro Khanna is with us taking your calls for the hour. We'll be right back with more of your calls for him in just a moment. It's 20 minutes past the hour. He's the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus's website is Khanna, KHANNA.house.gov, and you can tweet him at Rep Ro Khanna. We'll be right back. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back, Congressman Ro Khanna, taking your calls for the hour. Joe in Denver, Colorado. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna. Joe?
Representative Khanna, I want to ask you, you're on 3 important committees, the Armed Service, Budget, Oversight. What's the percentage of contractors that we have in Afghanistan, since we're talking about this potential pullback of our personnel, of our military personnel? What's the percentage of contractors? What are we spending on these contractors? And will the contractors stay if we do withdraw our troops?
So it's a very thoughtful question. We have a significant number of contractors there. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, and some of that they don't share publicly. But what I would say is that we need to see the plan. I mean, the plan still hasn't been publicly released of what this means for our contractors there, for their safety, and how we get those contractors out. My understanding is that the plan will call for the withdrawal of most of the contractors that are there, at least those that they're in a military capacity.
Cindy in Nogales, Arizona. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, good morning. I have a question about the coronavirus. Does it affect animals?
Cindy, I don't know the answer to that. Tom, do you know if
there are anecdotal reports out of China of dogs and cats being infected and sometimes dying and sometimes not. And there is one report out of Hong Kong of a person who believes that they got it from their dog, who got it from a neighbor. But this is all anecdotal. I mean, it did start out as an animal virus, presumably from pangolins, these kind of anteater animals. But, this is one of those questions that I don't think anybody knows the answer to right now.
No, that's what's so impressive about you, Tom. You can put any question, you have a thoughtful answer. I'll have our staff look into that, though. I love your listeners. They always get me thinking about issues.
Well, and I think this indicates, people are concerned about this, and this idea that you floated earlier of having congressional hearings. If Trump won't tell us the truth about this, let's have Congress do it, is a good one. Wayne in Earlville, Iowa. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Yeah. Congressman, my question is the mail system in jeopardy with the virus? Because with all the letters coming from all over the place, can that be still transferred?
In other words, can the virus be transmitted on a piece of mail? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, I think we have to take the appropriate precaution. My sense is that the virus viruses usually don't last in the air for hours on end, and still be transmittable. But I do think that that's something worth looking into, and how we're protecting people who are delivering the mail, and what precautions we're taking for them, who would probably be the most at risk.
Yeah, they are telling you now, if you have food delivered to your home, from one of these services, that you should wash your hands after you and throw away the bag after you take. Some folks are, I've heard public health officials say that. But, again, I don't know. George in San Francisco, listening on 910 a.m. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, thank you. My issue here is NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. It requires government agencies to assess environmental effects of decisions. And, of course, the Trump administration wants to diminish the public's access to input. And today is the last day that we have before the Trump administration rules on this and tries to diminish the power. It's the People's Environmental Law. It's totally urgent. And I'm totally passionate about this thing. And I know there's anybody who loves wildlife and the outdoors needs to know about this. So I'm asking, what is Congress doing about this?
Sure. I mean, NEPA is very, very important. I think any building, any construction, any project needs to have environmental considerations and an impact on an environment. That's what distinguishes us for how decisions are made in China or other authoritarian countries. I mean, here we have to consider the impact on society and on the environment. I strongly support that. Almost every Democrat strongly supports that. And we'll do all we can to have that preserved in the federal government and in the states.
Gordon in Seattle, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna. We have just a minute to the break, by the way.
Okay, I've been a Bernie fan ever since the Brunch with Bernie days, and I just think he needs a serious rebranding of the Medicare for All. Even progressives like my father-in-law still think it's socialized medicine. He needs to, talk about how it's government-administered health insurance, and the doctors don't change, and nothing changes except for your insurance, and the corporations won't, you won't lose your work health insurance. It'll just be a transition. And I was wondering also, when that happens, is there a need for the VA and state workman's comp? And then also, it will just be a boon to the economy and just be so transformative. It'll help.
Okay, we just have 20 seconds, Gordon. Let's let Congressman Khanna answer.
Gordon, I agree with you. I mean, look, Harry Truman proposed this in 45. They called it socialist medicine back then. But this is basically just saying that the government is providing the insurance. There's still going to be private doctors, private hospitals, private nurses. And it's going to unleash economic growth because there's just a recent study saying that if you have health care, then you can take a risk and become a small business owner. You can become an entrepreneur. Most companies would actually save money. The payroll tax on the corporation would be much cheaper than the current amount they're paying. And the final point to people like your father or father-in-law is that it's going to improve health care for seniors. Long-term care, vision, dental will now be covered.
Coming up on 28 minutes past the hour, Congressman Ro Khanna, Vice Chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, taking your calls for the hour in a national town hall meeting right here.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And we'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Khanna in just a moment. His website, khanna.house.gov. Well, happy Monday. It's the final week of the Free Speech TV, spring fund drive. And your essentially last chance this week to kick in a few bucks and help Free Speech TV keep going and keep going forward. This is such an important television network. It's such an important time. And, I think I've said all this so many times, but it probably can't be said too frequently. We really need your help. Free Speech TV needs your help. And if you haven't already called 877-378-8669 and made a contribution, small contributions, monthly contributions, they're the best kind. Large contributions, of course, are appreciated and are important. I think our average contribution is probably between $75 and $100 in that neighborhood, but we've been getting a lot more $3 and $5 contributions, $10 a month contributions, and that's really great because while it doesn't help us hit our goals this month or for this quarter, what it does mean is that we're building a foundation moving forward. So in future fund drives, it'll be, less painful, and we'll know that we've got something there, and it's going to continue coming in and all that sort of thing. Looking at it from my end, I mean, it's pretty amazing. The numbers that we're raising right now are less than a third of what we were raising 4 years ago, and I don't know why. It's just, but here it is. So and I know that our viewership has expanded considerably. So we really need your help. Probably it's a big political year and people are giving to politicians, but please call now 877-378-8669. We really need your help. With a $20 contribution, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. I saw one of these last week. I think it was in Chicago. It might have been in Minneapolis. I'm not sure, but I was, at one of the events, one of the book signings I was going to, and it was so cool. Oh, look at that! Or the Free Speech TV car magnet, which works like a bumper sticker, only it doesn't have glue on it. That helps, to help get the vote out. I'm voting Are You? With a $50 gift, there is the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. And we really do need the people to get out there and just effing vote, right? I mean, it's just, and these are amazing times. This morning, I'm not making this up. This morning, or late last night, Trump tweeted a photo of himself fiddling. Seriously. Trump tweeted a picture of himself fiddling. I mean, he was retweeting a tweet from Dan Scavino, one of his advisors, and it was obviously, Photoshop because he doesn't know how to play the violin. But here's Trump playing the fiddle. I think that the day that they start, the week or the month or whatever in junior high school, when they studied the history of the Roman Empire, I think he didn't show up, or maybe that was, he was, the little Richie Rich boy. Maybe that was one of the days that he had his surrogates sit in for him if they taught that in college. But he's literally fiddling while our country burns, economically, health-wise, infrastructure, education. A third of the offices in the Pentagon are not filled. The appointable positions. Our government is just being taken apart. Anyhow, back to the premiums. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice. There's 3 different things you can pick one of. Either the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $240 gift, join us for a meet and greet online, and we'll have an off-the-record, frank, candid conversation, and it can be a lot of fun. It can be very interesting. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack from Free Speech TV. That's the Free Speech TV postcards to send to friends and family, the car magnet, it's like a bumper sticker to get the vote out, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the Hidden History, you get all 3 of my books, all 3 of my Hidden History books that have come out so far. Hidden History of the Supreme Court, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, and the Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And, this makes a great gift, by the way. And all are autographed by me, by the author. And with a $1,000 gift, if you're still willing to get on an airplane, maybe we've got to come up with a different $1,000 gift. I don't know, given what's going on right now. But you can come to Portland and hang out with us and see the studio and all that kind of stuff. And we do have hand sanitizer here. So, and so far, so good, right? We're still here. Anyhow, bottom line, Free Speech TV needs your help. We need your help. Please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. Coming up on the Science Revolution. revolution this week. First, Trump is using the same logic on COVID-19 that he used for pesticides and pollution. And I'll explain why that's not a good thing. Nilay Marian, Forestry and Biodiversity Framework Coordinator with Friends of the Earth International, is here. Can we stop mass extinctions? Eva Hamer, Legal Coordinator of Direct Action Everywhere, drops by on her article, Why I Went Topless at Costco. Plus, Geeky Science. This is what happens when public transit is free. But wait, there's more. Tune in to the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Congressman Ro Khanna is taking your calls for the hour. He's the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and represents the Silicon Valley area in the U.S. House of Representatives. Bob in Raleigh, North Carolina, you are on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Well, hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. My question has been prompted by Tom when you mentioned before about was it the Darden Corporation, about not really giving sick days for healthcare workers?
Yeah, the Olive Garden restaurants.
So this is how it all affects is that my concern is, Congressman, what are we going to do for those people who don't have the wherewithal to be able to withstand losing their jobs or even the most basic, the most basic protections of food handling, and B, a protracted unemployment? And now, just a side note, I work as a sales guy. I got, this happens. Things happen, but I just got a note from my email from my second largest customer that all visits are off unless you're an employee, and I'm waiting for my first and third size customers to do this. They're in the tech sector. My concern, I'll be able to weather this. I'm lucky, but I'm thinking of those who do not have the same resources. Congressman, I look for your opinion and insight.
I appreciate you raising that. A couple points. First, we ought to be pushing at this time for paid sick leave. Rosa DeLauro has had that bill. We ought to pass it. And even if we're doing it at a temporary basis over the next 3 to 6 months, we ought to make sure that people who are not being able to come to work have compensation for that, and that we don't have folks who are sick feeling the obligation to come to work because they need to pay the bills. The second thing I proposed is that Medicare temporarily, at the very least, should be covering people's visits to ERs or to primary care physicians. If we want to control the outbreak, we want to make sure people are seeing a doctor if they need to.
Ritva in Barrie, Vermont, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, Representative Khanna. I believe that in order to be fair, the remaining debates need to be both candidates at the same time on the same stage, where both get the same questions and are able to respond in real time with each other. I also think that this may be a way to help allay any questions about Biden's supposed senility and dementia. What are your thoughts?
Well, Marissa, I do think that having a debate about the future of the party and the country for both candidates is very important, and it will change the dynamics of the race. You have two very different visions. One is a vision saying, let's go back to how things were before Trump, and another is saying, no, we need systematic change, that the status quo hasn't been working, and that we need a fundamentally new progressive vision for America. Having that contrast, I think, will give a lot of voters a sense of what is at stake in this primary.
Kevin in Santa Fe, New Mexico, listening on KTRC. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Thank you for taking my call, Tom, and Congressman Khanna, thank you for being there. I just noticed my question was about CDC updates and the information, and they've just changed again, but we're getting yesterday's information from 4 o'clock, and we're looking for more information and help getting that, and thank you for all the work you're doing with the progressive Congressman. I'll let you answer.
Well, Kevin, thank you. I just raised the issue you raised because constituents had called me about it a few days ago with the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I said, why is the CDC not being more transparent? Why were they putting out how many people they're testing and then they took that down? I don't know yet if they've put that back up, but they should be updating people every couple hours, and they need to be disclosing everything that they know. In terms of how many tests have been done, how the efforts are coming to get kits out there, how the efforts are coming to help healthcare workers. We need far more transparency.
Randy in Ottawa, Iowa, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Good morning, gentlemen. Congressman Khanna,
This is there's so much news in the airwaves these days. There's something I feel that is very important that happened was it Friday when they transferred Mick Mulvaney? A couple of weeks ago, he made the statement that it didn't matter if a Republican president was in office and they could run up the debt, but it did matter if it was a Democrat. And I believe that this is the main reason why he was transferred, because the king or the Republican Party is sitting there naked now. If you look at the Jude Wanniski theory of Two Santa Claus theory, there is a brief history, and it's called the Two Santa Claus theory and the Republican Party. Page 1, it's on abovetopsecret.com website. So
yeah, I've written a bunch of articles about it. So, Randy, let's let the congressman answer your question.
Well, Randy, look, I think Mick Mulvaney had a moment of honesty where he was saying that what the Republicans do is they cut taxes to the rich, they run up the debt to hamstring the ability of the federal government to take on progressive projects, and their hope is when a Democrat comes in, they will just be cleaning up the mess that the Republicans made. And this is why we need to have not fall into that trap and make sure that we're talking about the dynamic impact on economic growth that spending on infrastructure, education, and healthcare has, and that we are willing to push for these progressive ideals when we get into office and not be hamstrung by an austerity framework of just having to tackle deficits.
Brenda in Copperas Cove, Texas. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Thanks for taking my call, gentlemen. My question is on ranked choice voting states. Since Amy and Pete have dropped out, if Bernie or Joe were the second person that they would choose, do those delegates go to those people?
Well, Brenda, I think what happens at the end of the voting is that they total up who gets the most votes. And I believe if there are votes still for Pete Buttigieg or Elizabeth Warren or others who have dropped out, sufficient that they would get delegates, then they would get a few delegates. And so my sense is that you could still have some of those candidates accumulating a few delegates. That's my understanding.
Mark in Valley, Washington. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Yeah, I wanted to hit a little bit different subject. I haven't heard anything about this Judge Walton saying that Barr lied in the Mueller report, covering up, and that he's basically just covering up for Trump. And I'm wondering if anything's going to happen with that in Congress.
This is the redactions in the Mueller report that Bill Barr put in there.
We need to continue to do our work on the Oversight Committee and on the Intelligence Committee to continue to investigate this. I mean, just because the president wasn't convicted doesn't mean that the investigation shouldn't go on for the historical record. And I do believe that Adam Schiff, having talked to him, is pursuing these kind of leads to develop that record for history.
Steve in Topanga, California. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, you guys. I wanted to ask the congressman about whistleblowing laws. And we have them on the books, but they're not really. People get outed, and I think you were talking earlier about transparency, and I think a lot of people at the CDC are afraid to talk because they know their careers will be ruined if they do a whistleblower. And so, I mean, you look at the Defense Department, you look at the nuclear industry, you look at prescription drugs, intelligence. All these people have whistleblowers that come out, and they're supposed to be protected, and they get outed. If you read Tom Mueller's book, Crisis of Conscience, Whistleblowing in the Age of Fraud, it points out all these things that Congress could be looking at, and I would hope you would do that, and I'd like to know what you think.
Steve, I think that there's absolutely a need to strengthen protections for whistleblowers. We saw this with so many people attacking the whistleblower in the whole investigation with the president's actions in Ukraine. We need to make sure that it is easier for whistleblowers to come forward, that there is no sense that they would face retribution and that they're more protected. And so I think it's important for us in this Congress to re-examine those statutes and strengthen them.
Doug in Chandler, Arizona. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Yeah, gentlemen, I'm going to try to make this real quick. 2 tidbits. Did you notice Stephen Miller looks like a younger Joseph Goebbels? and Kelly Ayotte has been elected to the board of directors of Caterpillar. Now, my question for the congressman is, if we take over the House, the Senate, and the presidency again, will you guys promise that the first thing you'll do is take care of the voting and election laws?
Well, Doug, I think the highest priority has to be voting rights legislation. I believe we need a right to vote amendment. Mark Pocan and John Lewis have introduced this before. Of course, as you know, the 15th Amendment says that you're not allowed to discriminate based on race when it comes to the right to vote, but it doesn't actually affirmatively give people the right to vote. And if there was a right to vote amendment, that would actually give us greater standing to challenge voter ID laws or laws that are infringing on the right to vote.
Mark, hang on just a second. There we go. Mark in Ventura, California. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Yes, hello. Thanks for taking my call. Congressman, it's about Bernie's campaign messaging. Wouldn't it have made a difference in the outcome of last primary if Bernie's people had run commercials pointing out Biden's inaccuracies about his civil rights records?
Mark, the senator has, as you know, taken the approach to really outlay a positive vision. He's reluctant usually to go negative. But now we are contrasting on issues the differences with the vice president when it comes to trade, when it comes to support for health care for all, when it comes to a $15 minimum wage and a living wage, when it comes to ending endless wars.
Congressman Ro Khanna taking your calls for the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, our national town hall meeting here. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Khanna in just a moment. You can find his website at Khanna, KHANNA.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep Ro Khanna, as in Representative Rep Ro Khanna.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Congressman Ro Khanna taking your calls live in our national town hall meeting. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Jeanette in Chicago, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, and thanks for taking my call. I wanted to say I got off of a cruise ship Saturday that was in the Caribbean. It was a smaller cruise ship, and it was traveling through the Caribbean for 7 days. And it was also a French cruise ship, so there were less than 200 passengers on. But before we got on, our temperatures were taken. And throughout the cruise, there was messaging all over, talking about coughing and sneezing, how to do it, and there was hand sanitizer all over the ship. I'm wondering, do I need to check in with the CDC or my doctor to see if I'm a carrier at this point?
I think it would be prudent for you to do that. I appreciate the precautions you've taken and your diligence, but and of course I'm not in a position to give medical advice, but just from a perspective of common sense, I think checking in with your doctor and being extra cautious would make sense.
Especially if you develop a fever and a cough. On the other hand, Trump is not making these test kits available, is he?
No, I mean, that's, and when you look at other countries, from all the rhetoric of America's the greatest, we've got the greatest people, all of that, I mean, just how is South Korea getting 100,000 of these test kits and we're still under 1,000? I mean, I don't understand how we're not asking that question and getting a straight answer. And I don't understand, the other thing I don't understand is why we didn't use the WHO test. Fine, we think we could do better. Let's keep building it, but let's have something in the absence of nothing.
My conspiracy theory on that, in answer to that, is, if you didn't mean it rhetorically, is that it's Reaganism, it's Milton Friedmanism, that this administration believes that the free market can do everything better than government. And so they're waiting for one of these for-profit companies, pharmaceutical companies, to develop a test kit, or some other company to develop a test kit that they can make a huge profit off of, and they will direct, everything through that company. And And that company may well be a big donor to Trump. In fact, actually, one of the big companies that's making these things right now, Trump was heavily invested in 2 years ago. We don't know if he still is.
Yeah. Well, the irony is even Reaganism had a quasi-industrial policy where they helped these corporations, and at this point, it's surprising to me that they wouldn't even have, you'd actually have a situation where even if there was a private company that people so want the testing, that they would support government partnership with them. But they're just, I think it's partly it's just incompetence because they don't know and believe in the use of government.
I agree. And also, throughout November and December and even January, I think that, Donald Trump himself didn't think that this was ever going to come to America. And so he was preventing it. It's just, again, I have no specific evidence for this because everybody at the CDC and all these other agencies is just terrified to talk about it. But
well, it's a costly lesson for the country and the world. But one of the things this shows is that the world is far more interconnected and interdependent than an America First platform suggests. I mean, the Trump would often say we have only 4% of our economy tied up with China. And now we see, no, it's far more the impacts of global supply chains. And no matter how much you try to restrict immigration, as this president has tried, you can't contain the diseases that are global.
Yeah, amen. We'll be right back with more of your questions for Congressman Khanna. Stick around. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Philip in Atlanta, Georgia. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM. Philip? Oh, Philip, you got to listen to your phone, not your radio. Denise in Oakland, California. Denise, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Good morning, Congressman. Good morning, Tom. I have a question and I have a quick statement. My question is it's having to do with the CDC. Is there any way we can make the CDC not so political and just allow the medical folks to make the decision and just go ahead and do what they need to do as far as their end and not make it such a political issue? And my statement is that if we could possibly have Congress write up a policy or whatever, a law, so that they can remove the issue from the political aspect of it, so that the medical folks can just make the decision and the political aspect of it is just to give the financing and give them the funding that they need necessary to keep the general public safe.
Well, I absolutely think that we need to depoliticize the conversations with the experts at NIH and CDC. So my problem is not with the leadership at NIH or CDC or Dr. Fauci or others. My problem is, though, that the experts still need political leadership in terms of mobilizing resources, in terms of mobilizing the goals, and that you can't have a nation that doesn't have a clear vision and plan and just rely on experts to come up with that. They have the scientific knowledge, but they need the resources and the vision that the job is for the president to lay out.
Jay in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Thank you. Congressman Ro Khanna, you're doing a great job. And I've been on watching all the stations, and I saw you on a lot of the corporate media stations. Don't you think that the billionaires are controlling both the Democrats and the Republican Party to get what they want, to preserve capitalism? Isn't this really an exercise in capitalism?
Jay, I appreciate the kind comments. Are there forces that have a vested interest in the status quo? Pharmaceutical industry, insurance industry, defense contractors, places in Wall Street? Absolutely. But what I have seen, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, is an incredible energy to have more progressives elected in the House, to have more progressives behind Bernie Sanders. And whether he wins or not, I'm still hopeful he'll be the nominee. We have to look at it at points in this race. He's been the front runner, and so it shows to me that a people-powered grassroots movement along very progressive policies can succeed.
Terry in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'd like to ask the congressman's view. I read a story recently that Eric Prince is training former spies to enter the Democratic organizations and, brother of Betsy DeVos.
Terry, I read that piece. It was very concerning, very scary. In fact, some of my colleagues and I were on a chat sharing that, and it's concerning. I mean, we need to be vigilant towards these kind of games that people are going to try to play to block what they ultimately see as progressive policy.
Greg in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, Congressman. Hi, Tom. I have a question, and it just puzzles me. Why is nobody going after Jim Jordan with the OSU scandal? And, I mean, it seems like he's skating. And we need to go after him like he went after some of the witnesses.
Well, Greg, I'm not familiar with the details of that. I would just say that what we need to do is focus right now on Trump in terms of the making sure that we win our election against him. I think that's the most important thing. And then also focus on offering a real vision for how we're going to solve problems. But I do think every congressional candidate around the country who's running against different members ought to highlight the weaknesses, and certainly if there's an opponent to him, that everything should be fair game.
Terry in Ottawa, Illinois. We have a minute and a half to the end of the hour here. Terry, quick question for Congressman Khanna.
Yes, sir. I want to shout out like Ted Kennedy did over this health care, only he did it over minimum wage. This is ignorant, having people going out and having fundraisers and for their health care. But at any rate, the saga goes on, right? My question is, why can't we help Puerto Ricans out, for example, and have them go back to making some of our drugs like they used to? Our pharmaceuticals some of them used to be made in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, there was a change in tax law, Congressman, wasn't it?
Terry, I think it's a great point that we ought to be having and supporting more generic drugs, more drugs that are non-patented. My sense is that part of what's prevented that is the increase of IP laws and patent protections and forced licensing agreements, which is allowing a lot of these drug manufacturers to manipulate the process.
Yeah, there was also, just FYI, up until I think it was the Bush administration, Puerto Rico had an exemption for income tax for pharmaceutical manufacturers, and this Congress gave it to them. And so most of our drugs are actually being made in Puerto Rico. But then, I believe it was during the Bush administration, they did away with that exemption, and that's when they all started moving to China. Fact check me on that. I think I'm
that's fascinating. Right. So we'll look it up.
Congressman, thanks again so much for dropping by today. Really appreciate it.
Tom, always a pleasure. Really great questions.
Great talking with you. Thank you so much for being with us and for doing such a great job in Congress. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
a new video up for regular supporters of our program over at ThomHartmann.com, and this is about just a totally bizarre story about these three guys with no VA experience, not even veterans, who are all big shots down at Mar-a-Lago, that Donald Trump has put in charge of the Veterans Administration functionally. And their association, one of them is the head of Marvel Entertainment, their association with Johnson & Johnson and the New York Stock Exchange, and Johnson & Johnson, the big drug company, taking this very, very cheap chemical, ketamine, tweaking the molecule a little bit and rolling it out as a new anti-suicide drug, Spravato, that in clinical trials caused 6 people to die, 3 of them by suicide, and none of the people taking the placebo to die. And now Trump is telling the VA, you have to buy this highly inflated price drug from Johnson & Johnson, and the Democrats want to know what's up with the VA crowd guys. Check it out. It's at ThomHartmann.com. Well, happy Monday. It's the final week of the Free Speech TV, what is this, Spring Fund Drive. And your essentially last chance this week to kick in a few bucks and help Free Speech TV keep going and keep going forward. This is such an important television network. It's such an important time. And I think I've said all this so many times, but it probably can't be said too frequently. We really need your help. Free Speech TV needs your help. And if you haven't already called 877-378-8669 and made a contribution, small contributions, monthly contributions, they're the best kind. Large contributions, of course, are appreciated and, are important. I think our average contribution is probably between $75 and $100 in that neighborhood, but we've been getting a lot more $3 and $5 contributions, $10 a month contributions, and that's really great because while it doesn't help us hit our goals this month or for this quarter, what it does mean is that we're building a foundation moving forward. So in future fund drives, it'll be less painful, and we'll know that we've got something there, and it's going to continue coming in and all that sort of thing. Looking at it from my end, I mean, it's pretty amazing. The numbers that we're raising right now are less than a third of what we were raising 4 years ago, and I don't know why. It's just, but here it is. So and I know that our viewership has expanded considerably. So we really need your help. Probably it's a big political year and people are giving to politicians, but please call now 877-378-8669. We really need your help. With a $20 contribution, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. I saw one of these last week. I think it was in Chicago. It might have been in Minneapolis. I'm not sure, but I was, at one of the events, one of the book signings I was going to, and it was so cool. Oh, look at that! Or the Free Speech TV car magnet, which works like a bumper sticker, only it doesn't have glue on it. That helps, to help get the vote out. I'm voting. Are you? With a $50 gift, there is the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. And we really do need the people to get out there and just effing vote, right? I mean, it's just, and these are amazing times. This morning, I'm not making this up. This morning, or late last night, Trump tweeted a photo of himself fiddling. Seriously. Trump tweeted a picture of himself fiddling. I mean, he was retweeting a tweet from Dan Scavino, one of his advisors, and it was obviously, Photoshop because he doesn't know how to play the violin. But here's Trump playing the fiddle. I think that the day that they start, the week or the month or whatever in junior high school, when they studied the history of the Roman Empire, I think he didn't show up, or maybe that was, he was, the little Richie Rich boy. Maybe that was one of the days that he had his surrogates sit in for him if they taught that in college. But he's literally fiddling while our country burns, economically, health-wise, infrastructure, education. A third of the offices in the Pentagon are not filled The appointable positions. Our government is just being taken apart. Anyhow, back to the premiums. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice. There's 3 different things you can pick one of. Either the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $240 gift, join us for a meet and greet online, and we'll have an off-the-record, frank, candid conversation. And it can be a lot of fun. It can be very interesting. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack from Free Speech TV. That's the Free Speech TV postcards to send to friends and family, the car magnet, it's like a bumper sticker to get the vote out, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the hidden history. You get all 3 of my books, all 3 of my hidden history books that have come out so far: Hidden History of the Supreme Court, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, and The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And this makes a great gift, by the way. And all are autographed by me, by the author. And with a $1,000 gift, if you're still willing to get on an airplane, maybe we've got to come up with a different $1,000 gift. I don't know. Given what's going on right now. But you can come to Portland and hang out with us and see the studio and all that kind of stuff. And we do have hand sanitizer here. So, and so far so good, right? We're still here. Anyhow, bottom line, Free Speech TV needs your help. We need your help. Please call now at 877-378-8669. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Let's check in with Robert Weissman, our old buddy, the president of Public Citizen. Citizen.org is the website, and you can tweet him at public_citizen or at Rob_Weissman. Robert, welcome back to the program.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. I am reading stories that Trump is an investor in some of these private pharmaceutical companies that might be manufacturing coronavirus test kits, or that another. And this is the second that apparently that's from his disclosure forms from 2 years ago. I don't know if it's still the case. And then the other is it may or may not be a conspiracy theory, but or an explanation that the reason why, South Korea has tested, 180,000 people, and we have tested, we don't know because the CDC doesn't publish it anymore, but probably fewer than 1,000 in the United States, is that it's Reaganomics, essentially. It's this neoliberal belief that government can't do anything right, so you just, you don't do anything until the disaster is so great that there's an opportunity for a private corporation to make a lot of money, and then you wait for the private corporation to jump in and fix things. This is has been sold to us in a whole bunch of other areas over the years, and in many, I think, kind of a libertarian ideology. What's going on with all this? And what are you guys looking into in these contexts of, instead of helping the middle class or the poor, is Trump trying to help himself and his buddies?
Yeah, well, this is obviously a really big deal, and it's going to get a lot bigger. And so there's layers of the issue. I think on the testing side, the real problem was incompetence and blunders at the Centers for Disease Control, which I think reflects bad leadership by the head of the CDC, who was a bad appointment by the president. And also something that no one can really explain, which is why the CDC insisted it had to develop its own kits rather than relying on ones that have been developed in other countries, including in South Korea, as you say. So that's public health, very significant. I don't think there's big profiteering going on in that space. At the other end of the spectrum, there is potentially a huge amount of money in a coronavirus vaccine. We've done some deep dives into who's been doing research on coronaviruses, and the answer is it's almost been done entirely by the U.S. government since 2002. The National Institutes of Health spent about $700 million on coronavirus R&D since SARS broke out in 2002. and very little done by the private sector. There are a few companies that are doing work in this space, but they are themselves relying on government grants. $700 million is a lot of money, but if you actually understand how the pharmaceutical companies count their claims when they say they're doing work on R&D, where they do all kinds of adjustments for the risk of failure and the cost of capital and counting lost interest rate and stuff like that, it would be at least 10 times that figure. So there's a lot of federal money that's gone in to coronavirus R&D work. We're going to get a vaccine. It's going to take a little while. But the question is, will that vaccine be licensed exclusively or given over as a monopoly to one company? And will the government pay the manufacturers of that vaccine, the cost of making it and some small profit, or are they going to let them charge monopoly prices? And we're very worried about how that's going to go.
Wasn't this an issue?
The Secretary of Health and Human Services has said, look, we really can't interfere with innovation. How can we put some reasonable price controls on it? And the answer is the innovation is all being done by the federal government anyway. So you're just talking about giving away monopolies for no purpose if you don't put some price controls and license non-exclusively.
Wasn't this an issue in the debate around this $8 billion piece of legislation to fund, a response to the coronavirus? And I believe that the Democrats in the House were trying to include language in that legislation that would prevent basically price gouging or crisis profiteering by pharmaceutical companies. Did that survive or not?
Yes, it was a part of the fight, and the answer is no, it didn't really survive. There is language in about trying to ensure reasonable and fair pricing, but it says the Secretary of Health and Human Services should use the authority that he already has to achieve this objective. So it doesn't add anything at all, and it includes some worrisome language. It says, yeah, he should do that, but he should make sure he doesn't do anything to slow the development of a vaccine, which of course he shouldn't slow the development. But pharma will try to use that language as an excuse to block any efforts to control and maintain reasonable prices.
I understand, we're talking to Robert Weissman, the president of Public Citizen, Citizen.org. I understand that your organization has joined with 70 other organizations across the country, basically calling for Trump not to allow big pharma to profiteer on the coronavirus. What are the mechanisms available to us, to you as the president of this group and the other groups, to us, to people like me as just citizens, calling legislators, writing letters to the editor? What are the mechanisms available to us to try to either A, put some teeth into that, or B, if it has to be moral persuasion, do it effectively?
Yeah, well, I think the more we talk about it, the better it's going to be. And it is true that Secretary Alex Azar, the head of HHS, could solve this problem on his own if he were so inclined under his existing authority. It would be better if there was a congressional mandate, because I don't think we want to rely on the Trump administration. I'm hopeful, not certain, but I'm hopeful that it's going to go well. First of all, because it would be so outrageous to give away a monopoly in this situation and let price gouging take place that maybe just the public pressure will be sufficient to prevent it from happening. But second of all, it's not just a matter of sort of moral outrage or even justice or even the ability of any individual to get access to a vaccine. It's really about the public health need to make sure the vaccine is available to everyone. It just, the vaccine itself won't work as a public health intervention unless everybody can get it. And I think that's going to force even the Trump administration to make sure that we're not price gouged on this.
I know that vaccine companies that manufacture vaccines, pharmaceutical companies that manufacture vaccines, have a mind-boggling amount of liability limitation. They've got at law a lot of barriers to suing them or holding them responsible. The federal government has set up a vaccination. If you're damaged by a vaccine, the federal government compensates you. It's apparently to the tune of billions of dollars now. Does that have any impact on this? Are those laws things that are working or should be revisited?
Well, they'll be in place as background facts for this. It's a sort of separate question, but it's not completely unrelated. it is complicated because there as you know, and as listeners know, there have been problems with vaccines, and you do want people to be, and people must be compensated, and you want the companies held responsible. On the other hand, absent the creation of a public manufacturing capacity, which would be a good thing, but which we don't yet, we don't currently have in place, we do need companies willing to manufacture.
Right.
I'm not sure the current system gets the balance so wrong. And in any case, I think for this immediate crisis, which is going to go on for a little while.
I guess I was thinking that if you're a company making a vaccine and you're rolling it out, and let's say it's a new measles vaccine or something, you can take years to do this. There's not a great deal of urgency, and you can test it on large swaths of the population, and you can see if it's if people who are 3 years old respond to it way differently than people who are 12 years old, or people who are, real prone to allergies, or, more reactive than those who aren't, et cetera, all those things. But this is slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. I mean, we're trying to get this thing out, in as little time as possible, probably a year and a half at the most. Odds are that it will have some side effects, or more side effects, or, than a normal vaccine, just because it's not so tested so much. I guess the subtext of my question was, are there adequate protections in place on the one hand, and on the other hand, protections for the vaccine manufacturers? On the other hand, are there adequate protections for us who might be getting the vaccine to know that it wasn't done too hastily? That there is some liability.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at the end of the day, we're going to have to rely on the government regulators to provide the assurances of safety.
Mm-hmm.
As weakened as the regulatory system is, the Food and Drug Administration and Centers for Disease Control, I think that there's still a lot of really serious capacity and serious commitment to making sure that something is safe before it's rolled out for the general population. So I feel reasonably good about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you really would you want that decision to rest with government, with public health officials. You don't want the corporations making that decision, which I think is right. And moreover, although you want compensation for somebody who's injured, you don't want to rely on the compensation system as the mechanism to ensure safety. You actually just want to ensure safety.
Right. Yeah,
you do have issues about, what if something is manufactured poorly? So it wasn't just that the vaccine didn't work the way we hoped, but it wasn't made right. Well, you do want to hold companies accountable for that kind of thing, because that's really on them.
All right. So there's a whole spectrum of stuff here, and it's really important stuff. You can read all about it at citizen.org. Excuse me. Robert Weissman, the president of Public Citizen. Robert, it's always great talking with you. I always learn something. Thank you for dropping by today.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Good speaking with you. We'll be right back. We'll continue our conversation about the coronavirus and politics and the stock market and everything else that's going on in the world here. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with your calls and more of the news of the day in just a moment. And welcome back. Paul in Ashland, Oregon. Hey, Paul, I think you're our first caller who's watching us live on Twitter. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I'm a big fan, Tom, and I should tell you right up front, I'm a 30-year cannabis scholar and photojournalist. I've traveled the world participating in that industry for 3 decades now. And one of the things that I've learned about this incredible plant, and other plants as well, is that there are considerable antiviral, antifungal, antibiotic properties in plant extracts.
Oh, sure.
And these are things that people can access and use safely to not only effectively prevent and treat these pathogens, but also the nutritional properties of cannabis seed is a very effective nutraceutical in helping to bolster people's immune systems. And so the first line of defense against coronavirus or MRSA or any of the other biotic infections that are becoming increasingly resistant to the conventional treatments is contained in the herbs.
Yeah,
and
I'm a big fan of herbal medicine, and we know that what is it, black elderberry? Yeah, black elderberry actually, has been in good science has been found to fight the common cold or prevent the common cold or shorten the list, and that's a coronavirus. It's a coronavirus A. It's a different category, but so. I would be taking that if I was concerned, and I do, if I was concerned about this coronavirus or the common cold. But but that said, and Paul, thank you for the call. I don't think that we can just say, we're just going to go with plant-based medicines. There are antiviral drugs out there. They're experimenting with them. Hopefully, we'll have some good results. But yeah. Excellent points, all, Paul. Thank you. Julie in Port Orchard, Washington. Hey, Julie, we got about a minute to the break. What's up?
Tom, I just want to say my opinion on why the pharmaceutical companies haven't stepped up to come up with a vaccine or testing kits is they're all still feeling very hurt by the opiate crisis and lawsuits they've been losing. And
that was only 2 or 3 companies, though, wasn't it? I mean, wasn't that mostly Johnson & Johnson and the Sackler family's company? I forget the name of the company, but yeah.
But they also, I think they want the federal government to protect them, to say we will not allow anybody to sue you past, present, or future.
Well, that's pretty much already the case with vaccines.
Yeah, but they want those lawsuits, the opiate lawsuits, forgiven, forgotten, and they don't have to pay any money out.
Yeah. So you think that they're holding the coronavirus pandemic hostage to that? It's an interesting theory, Julie. I don't know of any evidence of that, but these guys, if they're willing to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans for profit, I don't put anything past them. Julie, thank you for the call. We'll be right back. It's 21 minutes past the hour. Stick around. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just want to bring you up to date on a few things. The market is still down a little more than 7% right now. It's down around 1,900. I've been warning you about the stock market for a year now, and I lost out on some profit opportunities. But boy, am I glad that what we have is in the bond market. Anyhow, I just wanted to, and because I don't think this is going to stop. A lot's going to depend on, or some of it is going to depend on whether Russia and Saudi Arabia can work out their differences, or whether they're just going to both jump with both feet into trying to destroy the U.S. shale oil industry. And if they do that, there are literally millions of American jobs that will be lost, millions. And it'll make outsourcing look small. So we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, over at the University of Washington's medicine system, the UW medicine system, they are now, they've set up a test area in the hospital garage lot for their employees. And the whole idea here is if you may be infected, if you think you may be infected, they don't want you coming inside the hospital. So it's like a drive-through, like those get your coffee drive-throughs. And so you'd pull up, and the person there will ask you a few questions about your symptoms, and if they think you probably should be tested, or your exposure, and if they think you should be tested, they'll swab you and take your phone number, and it takes a day for the results to come back. They'll call you the next day. But that way, it's all in the open air, and there's less exposure to the person who's giving the tests, and there's less and nobody's walking around inside a building. Cool. This is the sort of thing that as these test kits become more widely available, we should be setting up all over the country. And and frankly, they should be free. Anyway, there's that. Secondly, the Associated Press issued a bombshell report Saturday evening. This is from rawstory.com. The White House, this is from the Associated Press. Quote, the AP quote, the White House overruled health officials who wanted to recommend that elderly and physically frail Americans be advised not to fly on commercial airlines because of the new coronavirus, a federal official told the Associated Press. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention submitted the plan this week as a way of trying to control the virus, but White House officials ordered the air travel recommendation be removed. And as Chris Hayes, MSNBC's Chris Hayes tweeted, they care about one thing, the president's reelection, and they think that depends on the economy, so they want to pretend there's nothing going on so it doesn't hurt GDP. It's sociopathic and dangerous. And I would add, the idea of politicians, in this case the president, overruling the Centers for Disease Control it's like the definition of insanity. This is about as bad as it can possibly get. So anyhow, the other thing with regard to the economy, I was talking about the economy a minute ago. The thing to start looking at in particular are going to be, and the thing that I think is really going to start taking a big hit, particularly over the next few weeks and months. Disney might be somewhat insulated from this because they both have theme parks and they own television networks and make movies and have channels and all that kind of stuff. But the travel industry, airlines, hotels, cruise lines, they are already getting hammered, and it's going to get worse. And Trump is now starting to talk about, well, maybe we should bail out the hotels. Gee, I wonder who owns hotels. But the other big hit, of course, with the collapse in the price of oil is going to be the oil patch, and like I said, this is going to be really, really problematic, and 40% of Americans literally cannot afford a $500 expense, a $400 expense. 40% of Americans, $400, $1,000, 60% of Americans can't handle a $1,000 expense. And so when people get, and the vast majority of workers, low-pay workers, people in the bottom 60 or 70% of the economy, have no sick days off. They don't have paid sick days. And so they're going to come to work sick. And they're going to be preparing food, and they're going to be handling things at the grocery store, and packaging your broccoli and putting it on the shelf. And they're going to be, it's all over the place. We're literally the only developed country in the world that doesn't require paid sick days. This is insane. If there is one thing that Congress and the White House could do right now that would protect all of us, it would be to mandate paid sick leave nationwide.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And by the way, it would stimulate the economy. Pelosi and Schumer were working on that yesterday while Donald Trump was tweeting about fake news media and playing golf. Well, happy Monday. It's the final week of the Free Speech TV, spring fund drive. And your essentially last chance this week to kick in a few bucks and help Free Speech TV keep going and keep going forward. This is such an important television network. It's such an important time. And, I think I've said all this so many times, but it probably can't be said too frequently. We really need your help. Free Speech TV needs your help. And if you haven't already called 877-378-8669 and made a contribution, small contributions, monthly contributions, they're the best kind. Large contributions, of course, are appreciated. And are important. I think our average contribution is probably between $75 and $100 in that neighborhood, but we've been getting a lot more $3 and $5 contributions, $10 a month contributions, and that's really great, because while it doesn't help us hit our goals this month or for this quarter, what it does mean is that we're building a foundation moving forward. So in future fund drives, it'll be less painful, and we'll know that we've got something there, and it's going to continue coming in and all that sort of thing. Looking at it from my end, I mean, it's pretty amazing. The numbers that we're raising right now are less than a third of what we were raising 4 years ago, and I don't know why. It's just, but here it is. So and I know that our viewership has expanded considerably. So we really need your help. Probably it's a big political year and people are giving to politicians, but please call now 877-378-8669. We really need your help. With a $20 contribution, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. I saw one of these last week. I think it was in Chicago. It might have been in Minneapolis. I'm not sure, but I was, at one of the events, one of the book signings I was going to, and it was so cool. Oh, look at that. Or the Free Speech TV car magnet, which works like a bumper sticker, only it doesn't have glue on it. That helps, to help get the vote out. I'm voting Are You. With a $50 gift, there is the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. And we really do need the people to get out there and just effing vote, right? I mean, it's just, and these are amazing times. This morning, I'm not making this up. This morning, or late last night, Trump tweeted a photo of himself fiddling. Seriously. Trump tweeted a picture of himself fiddling. I mean, he was retweeting a tweet from Dan Scavino, one of his advisors, and it was obviously, Photoshop, because he doesn't know how to play the violin. But here's Trump playing the fiddle. I think that the day that they start, the week or the month or whatever in junior high school, when they studied the history of the Roman Empire, I think he didn't show up, or maybe that was, he was, the little Richie Rich boy. Maybe that was one of the days that he had his surrogates sit in for him if they taught that in college. But he's literally fiddling while our country burns, economically, health-wise, infrastructure, education. A third of the offices in the Pentagon are not filled. The appointable positions. Our government is just being taken apart. Anyhow, back to the premiums. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice. There's 3 different things you can pick one of. Either the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $240 gift, join us for a meet and greet online, and we'll have an off-the-record, frank, candid conversation, and it can be a lot of fun. It can be very interesting. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack from Free Speech TV. That's the Free Speech TV postcards to send to friends and family, the car magnet, it's like a bumper sticker to get the vote out, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the Hidden History, you get all 3 of my books, all 3 of my Hidden History books that have come out so far. Hidden History of the Supreme Court, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, and the Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And, this makes a great gift, by the way. And all are autographed by me, by the author. And with a $1,000 gift, if you're still willing to get on an airplane, maybe we've got to come up with a different $1,000 gift. I don't know, given what's going on right now. But you can come to Portland and hang out with us and see the studio and all that kind of stuff. And we do have hand sanitizer here. So, and so far, so good, right? We're still here. Anyhow, bottom line, Free Speech TV needs your help. We need your help. Please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. Coming up on the Science Revolution this week, first, Trump is using the same logic on COVID-19 that he used for pesticides and pollution. And I'll explain why that's not a good thing. Nilay Marian, Forestry and Biodiversity Framework Coordinator with Friends of the Earth International, is here. Can we stop mass extinctions? Eva Hamer, Legal Coordinator of Direct Action Everywhere, drops by on her article, Why I Went Topless at Costco. Plus, Geeky Science. This is what happens when public transit is free. But wait, there's more. Tune in to the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Hey, welcome back. Hey, some fascinating research that was just released by the American Heart Association. It was done at the Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine in Rochester, Michigan. This was a study of several thousand people, 54% female. The average age of the people that was being tested was 69. So this was older adults. But it appears that this is something that is true, across the entire spectrum of life. The question was, is this a big deal for older adults? And that was getting just a little bit of reasonable exercise, as in walking. And we're talking 30 minutes of light intensity activity, like walking, on this one study where the average participant age was 69, 30 minutes of light intensity activity, including walking, was associated with a 20% lower risk of dying from any cause. And older adults, that was the average age 79, were 67% less likely to die of any cause if they were moderately physically active for a minimum of 150 minutes each week, which would be the equivalent of walking 2,000 to 4,000 steps a day. 38 and older women, average age 79, 38% less likely to die from a heart attack, heart failure, stroke, etc., if they were walking between 2,000 and 4,000 steps every day. They said, despite popular belief, there's little evidence that people need to aim for 10,000 steps daily to get cardiovascular benefits from walking. Our study shows that getting just over 4,500 steps per day is strongly associated with a reduced risk of dying. Taking more steps per day, even if just a few more is achievable, it looks like that whole 10,000 steps thing was first developed by a pedometer manufacturer, a company, these companies that measure how many steps you've taken. So, anyhow, Maggie in Seattle. Hey, Maggie, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, nice. Thank you for taking my call. So I am a Lyft driver in Seattle, also Uber driver. I used to work in investment banking for 5 years, and I worked in product management. I studied psychology, and I basically took the investment job to pay my student loans, and then I realized I did not want to pick these brains because they're quite sociopathic. And I did actually hear some crazy things in meetings, like more people need to die, let the Hunger Games begin, those kind of things.
Oh my God!
And that's around the time that, and I canvassed for Bernie. I knocked on doors.
So, Maggie, if I may, what's the point you're making?
Yeah. So I just wanted to tell you about my experience with giving passengers rides as a Lyft driver in Seattle with the outbreak.
Okay.
I gave a 70-year-old a ride yesterday who had a mask on. I picked him up from the hospital, and he said that he had influenza. And he said that he wanted to have them test for coronavirus. And they said, well, we can't do that. And he said, well, I was paralyzed in bed for 4 days. Why can't you test me for coronavirus? And they said, well, you're getting better. We're not going to test you.
Yeah, they're very restrictive in who they will test. And if you test positive for the flu, typically they won't test you for coronavirus. And I'm guessing this is not so much good science or medicine as it is just the limited availability of the test kits. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doc. But Maggie, are you, as a driver, as a Lyft and Uber driver, are you disinfecting your car and being very careful when you are carrying passengers who may be infected with coronavirus?
No, absolutely. I've had several passengers that have been sick in Seattle who have been traveling, because people in Seattle travel to California daily for work. So I have Purell multi-surface spray that I spray the outdoor handles, the indoor handles, the seatbelt.
Good on you.
Every single passenger.
Yeah.
Before they even touch the handle, and then they all appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it worries
Well, it
me
also
because
keeps you safe.
I have so many elderly passengers that aren't even sick. They're just going to book clubs.
Yeah.
So it's just insane how unprepared we are, and I'm just ready to have a president that's equipped to handle these kind of things.
I'm with you, and I'm ready to have a president and a Congress that will say that people like yourself who are working in the gig economy, where you don't have health insurance as a benefit, that everybody should have access to free health care or very, very, very affordable health care. It's just crazy. Maggie, thank you for the call. And thanks for sharing your story with us. I appreciate it. Andrea in Island Park, New York. Hey, Andrea, what's up?
Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So what I wanted to talk about is kind of an unintentional consequence of the coronavirus as it relates to voting. As we know, it's hard enough to get citizens out to vote, no matter what demographic you're in. And, how will coronavirus affect those citizens, my fellow citizens that are going to the polls as early as tomorrow? I know that I am being very cognizant of being clean and not going in large crowds, but in California, you had to wait in 7 hours to cast your vote, and that's 7 hours potentially that you're around people who may be carrying the virus, since it is contagious prior to it manifesting, and people generally don't even know that they have it with the community spread precautions.
So what's your point, or is there a question?
So my question is, are our political leaders thinking about this at such a very important time? I mean, on both sides, there are candidates in the primaries, so this should be like a nonpartisan issue. How do we protect citizens' rights to vote? Maybe we declare a state of emergency and we postpone these things. I'm not sure. Maybe just for a month until we figure out exactly how to contain it, because the spread of the virus is what's dangerous. It's not getting the virus.
I think postponing elections.
Like me and have asthma.
Yeah, I think postponing elections is a dangerous thing, but or a dangerous precedent. But Texas, for example, if you want to get a mail-in ballot in Texas, you have to present a doctor's slip. You have to prove that you can't come, you're sick, you're disabled, whatever. That's crazy. I would think that states that are holding primaries, one thing that they might be able to do, it might be too late now, but in fact, it's definitely too late for Tuesday's election, but would be to say, in light of the coronavirus thing, we're going to mail out all ballots, period. We're not even going to open polling places. And
just one more point.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you look at what they're doing in China with the mobile drive-through testings for coronavirus, maybe it could be something as simple as people can pull up, a rep come to the car, we get to fill it out and hand it right back to them. It can be really simple. It doesn't have to be complicated to protect each other.
Yeah. There are a lot of options, and now's the time for creative thinking, and that's a great one. Thank you for kicking that off, Andrea. Good to hear from you.
All right.
Thomas in Waialua, Hawaii. Am I saying that right, Thomas?
Yeah, I talked to you the first time about a week ago. On Waialua is how you say it. Kind of run it fast. But anyway, I'm the gentleman who's 70 years old. Just to refresh you who I am.
Oh, you're the guy who never uses drugs because you don't eat sugar.
Well, it's not that simple.
Or never gets sick.
Please don't make fun of it. I do get sick, but I know how to take care of it without drugs.
Okay.
And the worst thing in this, the biggest contributor with problem with coronavirus vaccine is in our grocery stores. It's in the front counters and in the candy aisle and in the cookie aisle. Not only is it sugar, but it's GMO sugar, which is probably messing with our RNA and DNA. And, I told you my story a couple of days ago, and you listened you listened well. You listened to me, and then and you agreed with me. Then I heard you on a program. I've been listening to you a lot. I used to before. I heard you the next day say that you take a blood pressure medication.
I do.
So you really, so the reality is, with all due respect, you really don't get what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, perhaps not. I'm very sorry. Larry in Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom, thanks a lot for pointing out that as a culture, a political culture, we've focused way too much at the top of the ticket, unlike our brethren in Europe or even Canada. I guess we could use a parliament, maybe someday. That's a fever dream.
Yeah.
But
well, the instant runoff voting will get you there, ranked choice voting. But anyway,
yeah,
not
that
to
would
derail,
help.
not to derail your conversation, Larry. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, especially with the two likely Democratic candidates we're going to end up with, one or the other, both being elderly white men and one prone to gas, and that's probably not going to improve as time goes on. You've pointed out that they really need to form a team. Some people point to AMLO in Mexico, but present that. Maybe if you have Tom Perez on speed dial, see if he can get on board with that, to get them to show they're going to come in with a good troop.
Well, I think the
strength, a
Biden
good
campaign
team.
has been listening to this show because the Axios newsletter this morning, as I recall, it was one of the. It was either that or the New York Times, daily summary of political news. But I'm pretty sure it was Axios. One of the Axios newsletters. I get about 3 of them. Said that the Biden campaign was considering, seriously considering having. And they were talking about a group of people who were all candidates as members of the administration, and whether these were coming out of the campaign or whether this was coming out of a secondary group, I don't know, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me here to read to you to be very precise about it, but. They named Kamala Harris, they named Elizabeth Warren, they named a number of people in this article. And so, yeah, I get it. I'm with you. And the vice presidential pick is going to be, whether it's Bernie or Joe, the vice presidential pick is going to be the most important because in all probability, they're going to be one-term presidents. I mean, they're both in their late 70s. So.
Well, it would be great if they would, a lot of my friends agree if they would announce that. Well,
yeah, I agree. I agree.
And we're going to come in with troop strength, and because they're going to be up against it. Whichever one of them gets in.
Yeah, I totally agree, Larry. Larry, thanks a lot for the call. Good to hear from you, and thanks for listening to us there in Asheville on YouTube, which is great. Anyhow, we'll continue our conversation here in just a moment. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, telling you the truths that the multinational corporations would really rather you didn't know all about. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I'll be right back with your phone calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Doug in Columbus, Ohio. Hey, Doug, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Wow, I called at the top of the show. I finally got through. Are you familiar with TDMSresearch.com?
I am not.
Okay, well, they're showing that in multiple states, the exit polling there's a big disparity way out of the margin of error between the official results and the exit polling. And exit polling,
saw that.
I'm sure you would agree, is the gold standard of how legitimate or
yeah, it is, and I just wrote a book about this, and I saw that Robbie had shared that with me out of Texas, the Texas or Massachusetts rather, excuse me, that those exit polls were showing Bernie winning, but the actual results showed that Joe Biden won.
Also, Vermont, Texas, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and I'm sure California is not all in because they mailed them in. But I got that.
It's very troubling.
Website from Professor Mark Crispin Miller's News from the Underground email list. Are you on that?
I am not sure. I'm on a bunch of them.
Okay, well, it's tdmsresearch.com. And what are we going to do about it? I mean,
We need to have.
We can't just have election after election where these are stolen. Like in 2004, I'm from Ohio, the scene of the crime.
Yeah. If any state official wanted to take away your gun, Doug, they would have to go to court, and they'd have to jump through all kinds of hoops, and they would have to prove that they had a good reason. But if they want to take away your vote, or mess with your vote, or hand your vote off to some private for-profit corporation that has its own agenda, there's nothing to stop them from doing that. And that's largely what's happened. We need a constitutional amendment that unambiguously says that every American has a right to vote, or at the very most, every American is not in jail.
Rigged.
My point. If we had a right to vote and a right to know that our vote was accurately counted, then I don't believe that these for-profit companies, these black box voting operations, would be legal.
Okay.
And and they shouldn't be. I mean, in 2002, when we did this, when we privatized the vote with the Help America Vote Act, and we gave $5.6 billion to the states to buy corporations from two companies, Diebold Election Systems, which was owned by one of the Yarosevich brothers, and ES&S, which was owned by the other one of the Yarosevich brothers. These two brothers who were Christian end-timers who believed that the end of the world is about to come. Fundamentalist, hardcore. That was just an absolutely insane crime against democracy, and God only knows, if our vote is being messed with or has been messed with for a long, long time. We need to.
Tom,
say that again.
The last thing I have to say, it's not just the Republicans who steal these elections; it's Democrats.
Oh, we're talking about the Democratic primary here, Doug.
Right on.
That was my point. Right. That was where Robbie shared the Massachusetts information with me, and it's really troubling that the Democratic primary has exit polls and election results that are diverging. I mean, this is what brought down the government of Ukraine, was when there was a discrepancy between the exit polls and the election. And it doesn't happen in any other country, but it does happen here, and it happens regularly. And we've got to figure out exactly why, and we've got to put a stop to it. And I think that the main thing that will do that is to say that we have a right to vote. And a state or an official of the state may not intervene in that right without first going to court and making a very, very strong case. It's just nuts that a state can take away your gun, or can't take away your gun, but they can take away your vote. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. It's wrong. We'll be back. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Cindy in Sussex, New Jersey. Hey, Cindy, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a longtime listener and fan.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could elaborate on paid sick leave. Like, are you thinking of like a federal program like Workman's Comp? Because I work for a small company of about 30 employees, and we have medical benefits, and we do have a number of paid sick leave and vacation days for the employees. But small companies like ours, like, we can't afford to pay for somebody to be out for like 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. We're a small retail company that we need our people there. I'm just curious what you had in mind for situations like this virus, if somebody's out for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, as the owner of a small company with 3 full-time employees and maybe 3 or 4 part-time employees,
right.
I get what you're talking about. And I do think that companies that are operating below a certain threshold should probably get some sort of government subsidy or pass-through. And not a tax break, because small companies typically don't pay income taxes. They just don't generate that much profit, and there's not that much left over at the end of the year, if anything. And I think for small companies there should be some sort of a federal safety net, as it were. This is a public health issue. I mean, it's been sold or argued, rather, debated as a morality issue Jimmy Carter campaigned on this in 1980. Jimmy Carter actually campaigned on single-payer health care in 1980. And so this debate goes back probably to the 60s, and it might have been it might have been part of one of the things that Lyndon Johnson was considering for the Great Society. I don't know, but the idea of paid sick leave, up to this point, we have been making this moral case for it, and I think we need to make a public health case for it. And, for big companies, they can afford it, but it needs to be mandated by the government. If it's not, it's just never going to happen. Cindy, thank you for the call. Sharon in Millsboro, Delaware. Hey, Sharon, what's up?
Hey, Tom, first-time caller.
Thank
I have
you.
a question. I follow the WHO website, and then I also follow this program called GPS something. And it shows you where the coronavirus is. And I noticed that Russia is not even reporting. Is that because they don't have it over there, or they don't have the report?
I would be astonished. In fact, I'm bringing up that page right now. The one I use is the Johns Hopkins CSSE page, which is systems.jhu, as in John Hopkins University.edu, systems.jhu.edu. And let's see. That's interesting. If Russia's not on there, I would guess that they are. Yeah, I can't read the list that fast. There's so many countries on there now. There's a total 113,575 confirmed cases, 62,496 recovered, 3,995 deaths, mostly in Italy, Iran, South Korea, Spain, and China. But that is an anomaly. Wait a minute, there's a dot right there. I don't know if that's. Russia is showing 17 confirmed cases, 3 recovered cases, 14 active cases.
Okay,
according
good.
to Johns Hopkins.
That for me.
So they are reporting whether they're where they're at with it. I mean, it may just be that there's not that much activity, international flying in and out of Russia to some of the countries that are affected right now. I just don't know. It's a good question. Sharon, thank you for the call. Katie in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hey, Katie, what's up?
Hi. I am a retired nurse, and I've been an advocate for, single-payer health care for years. But my concern was that, those that are uninsured or underinsured, since, we think that health care is a right, are they going to be able to be tested as well if they are showing symptoms? Mike Pence would not answer that question in a press conference the other day.
Right. Well, I mean, right now I'm getting reports, and I'm seeing reports on social media, people who believe that they have adequate symptoms to be tested, who are being turned down for tests. It's just they're not widely available. And even people who have health insurance. I mean, there's a story of that guy in Florida 2 weeks ago who had come back from a place where he knew he was exposed. And so he voluntarily went to the local hospital and said, I was in contact with people in whatever country it was. I think it was China. I was in contact with people who we know had the coronavirus. Would you test me? They tested him. It came back negative. He goes home and he gets a $3,600 bill in the mail. That's nuts. I mean, there's people that would wipe them out. That would just, there are people that
tested if they have to pay that
there
kind
are people
of bill.
that
They'll just say, I'm not going to get tested.
That's right. They're either A, they're not going to get tested, or B, they're going to end up homeless. I mean, this is crazy. We've got to make these tests widely available. They have to be available for free, and we've got to do something about paid sick leave before we end up with a problem of sick people spreading this disease. And that's what community transmission is, by the way. Anyhow, thanks so much for being with us today. We'll continue tomorrow. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. And be sure to tell your friends where they can find Progressive Media.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Well, happy Monday. It's the final week of the Free Speech TV Spring Fund Drive. And your essentially last chance this week to kick in a few bucks and help Free Speech TV keep going and keep going forward. This is such an important television network. It's such an important time. And I think I've said all this so many times, but it probably can't be said too frequently. We really need your help. Free Speech TV needs your help. And if you haven't already called 877-378-8669 and made a contribution, small contributions, monthly contributions, they're the best kind. Large contributions, of course, are appreciated and, are important. I think our average contribution is probably between $75 and $100